minutes after 3 o'clock. Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Headline with me, Aldrin Sampear. Thank you so much for choosing us this afternoon. We're with you from now up until 6 o'clock. It is great to be back. And thank you once again to John for standing in during the past week when I was away. Did miss you guys a lot. And it's great to be back. And I'm back on World Kindness Day. Ever thought that there's a day called World Kindness Day? Just heard this for the first time now with Bridget Masinga. But happy World Kindness Day to you. Maybe you want to wish somebody else a happy World Kindness Day as well. So coming up on the show this afternoon, we speak to Lindiwe Kwele, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Gauteng Partnership Fund. And this is in relation to the investigation into loans that were given to Nonkwelo Investment, which is owned by the Deputy President of the country's son-in-law. So we'll be speaking about that and also the inconclusive findings that have come out of this investigation. And then we speak to Pearl Makobane, SABC News reporter. We get an update on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, the trial within the trial still continuing. And then at 20 to 4, we speak to Zayed Hasman, who's Gold One Mine's head of legal, as the drama continues at Gold One Mine in Springs as AMCU members stage a protest. We'll also be speaking to the president of AMCU, Joseph Matunja, who'll be joining us for that conversation. And then at around 20 past 4, we speak to Joe Mason, who's a legal officer for Unite Behind, as we look at the case against Judge Makubela in the misconduct investigation, which has now been postponed yet again. Another story that we're chasing this afternoon, we're just waiting for confirmation, is the decision that has now been taken by COPE to expel its one of its members, who is the speaker for the council in the city of Joburg, Colleen Makubela, and this is after she signed the party up to the South African Rainbow Alliance, which is also a coalition, which is a coalition that's being put together ahead of next year's local government elections. So the negotiations and the conversations there, and the party says that she did that without their authority and without their blessings for that, and going ahead. And now actually, it's called SARA. The acronym SARA. Colleen Makubela is actually the face of SARA. So we will be speaking to COPE, hopefully if they do agree to come on. But early on they did have a press briefing. So those are some of the stories that we have on the agenda this afternoon. Anything else that you'd like to place on the agenda on 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
#SAFMBTH.
And we start off with the story with the Gauteng Partnership Fund, the CEO, Lindiwe Kwele, now joining us on the line. Earlier on today, Gauteng Human Settlements MEC, Lebogang Maile, released an investigation report into the loans offered to Nonkwelo Investments, owned by Nceba Nonkwelo, who is the Deputy President Paul Mashatile's son-in-law. According to Maile, the investigation was unable to make conclusive findings whether all applicable policies, procedures, and other laws and regulations were followed in approving Nonkwelo's investment loan, due to certain crucial documents that the Gauteng Partnership Fund failed to locate. Lindiwe Kwele is the CEO of the GPF and now joins us on the line. CEO, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and good afternoon to the SAFM listeners.
So why were the findings inconclusive? What happened to the documents if you were also given access to the minutes of the board meetings?
Thank you for that question. I just want to clarify some few issues here. In terms of some of the documents that could not be found, it's not in relation to the board minutes or the investment committee meeting minutes, but it was in reference to the minute of the onboarding process, which was an administrative process. But in terms of the board approval processes on all the committees as well as the board minutes, that was submitted. I just wanted to clarify that. So what the investigator then had an issue with was the process where you're advertising for the opportunity for the beneficiaries to be onboarded, as well as the minute of the committee that does the evaluation for the beneficiaries. But all the minutes of the board committees as well as the main board were found. We were able to demonstrate that. And I think, Aldrin, it's important to indicate that the executives that are in the GPF right now were not in the employ of the GPF at that particular time. There has been some employees leaving the institution, but we did everything that we could to submit every information that was requested. But obviously, in areas where we couldn't, there was nothing that we could do at the time. Thank you.
Sure. But I don't understand, as I'm saying, like, so you managed to get access to the board meetings, the minutes of the board meetings. So why has the committee's meeting, the minutes of the committee's meetings in the adjudicating process, how have those disappeared?
It's not the adjudication in the context of supply chain. I think let's give context, because when you are bringing in the beneficiaries for the Entrepreneurial Empowerment Property Fund, you advertise and then you bring people on board to be taken through. That process is separate to a loan application process. I hope I'm making myself clear, because the loan application process gets subjected to a different process altogether, and that is the process that make it to the board committee, the governance committees, if I may put it that way. So you could find that when you are onboarding EEP beneficiaries, maybe out of 50, maybe only 10 can actually bring in projects that require approval. And then that's what was happening at that particular time. But also, I think it's important to indicate, Aldrin, that the GPF of that time, for instance, at the time, they didn't have the Technical Credit Risk Committee. To date, we have a loan application system as well as a loan management system and the Technical Credit Risk Committee that actually regulate and facilitate that particular process.
Yeah. Okay, and the finding that there was no legal basis or otherwise for GPF to approve the scope change by restructuring the project from affordable housing to a student accommodation project. We know that this was done even when the process had already started, when some of the applicants had actually fallen away, and then the scope of all of this was changed. Was there an indication why the scope was changed from affordable housing to student accommodation?
Yeah, just to give context again, if you look at the project, when the project started, they were onboarded as an EPF project. Obviously, there's per each product, there's a limitation in terms of the amount that the organization can fund. And as you know, that GPF always assumes a role of a mezzanine fund, a junior funder, and then there'll always be a senior funder in all the projects that we get involved with. At that time, it was the GPF and the NHFC, GPF being a junior funder, and the NHFC. And then obviously in every project lending process, the junior funding instrument facility is the one that gets exhausted first before you tap into the senior funding process. So when they were onboarded, after there was an appraisal report, and I think you'll notice that even the investigator had an issue with the comprehensiveness and the quality of the actual appraisal report. It was in place, but I don't know how it didn't pick up the rock that became a huge impediment in terms of the cost overrun at the time. But I want to confirm that to date we do extensive geotech studies, and even our team, they go on site to verify before even the report is tabled at the TCRC to make sure that everything, all I's are dotted and T's are crossed in as far as legal, technical, and financial due diligence. So that created a problem of cost overruns. And the issue with the investigators are saying, why then did we allow, if the issue of affordability of the project viability at an EPF process, at a rental accommodation housing process, proved that it was not viable, what was the basis to actually approve the restructuring? But mind you, remember the organization had already invested the 7.2 million. So they were trying to salvage as opposed to losing the investment that was there. So when that investment, when that process was being approved, the developer in question needed to also go and raise more funding, because now with the student accommodation, in order to make this viable, they needed to do, instead of 45 units, 90 units. So they needed more money and they couldn't get the money, and that's why the project was abandoned. And I need to also indicate, Aldrin, that in terms of the monies, because as you know, the public narrative has always been we dispersed 30 million, which is factually incorrect, and the report confirms that the amount that was dispersed was only 7.2 million, and the investigators also confirmed that the 7.2 million can be accounted for and that it was used for the purpose it was intended for. They even confirm that the settlement agreement upon which we now need to recoup the monies that were given to the developer, the settlement process, yes, is underway in line with our asset disposal framework.
So of that 7.2 million, how much has Nkwelo Investment paid back?
They did not pay anything back. As I said, remember, the GPF, they did not pay anything back. That's where the process was abandoned, and that's where, because there are certain securities that we put in place, and that settlement agreement, you can either go to court or you exercise some of the remedies that the organization can have to fast track and recover that money. And then the settlement agreement was then conducted, and the process of disposal. So we needed to also bring in either your real estate and your auctioneers to come on board to assist the GPF in disposing not just Nonkwelo but all other non-performing loans.
Okay. With Nonkwelo Investment, was the issue at all raised that actually the developer is the son-in-law of, at the time, he was still the Human Settlements Minister, or MEC? Did that issue come up at all?
The terms of reference for the actual investigation, that was one of the key issues that we needed tested by in terms of the undue influence or favoritism or any conflict of interest. As you know, that the rental housing approval was done in 2013, and then the restructuring only happened in 2017, where the person in question, as well as the relative, was involved around the 2017 at the restructuring process. And remember, as much as the restructuring happened, it was abandoned because he couldn't raise any funding. So that matter was abandoned altogether, and he couldn't even exhaust the junior funding. So that process became moot. Yeah.
But what was the finding?
The finding was that the GPF trustees may be liable for allowing the restructuring, exposing the GPF to greater risk, if I may call it that way. So GPF trustees needed to have dealt with this matter once and for all when they discovered that it was not viable at a social housing perspective, when that huge rock was discovered on site.
Okay.
So the appraisal report really was found wanting in terms, because the geotech must look at all aspects and everything, and they felt that that part was not thoroughly done.
So the part of the relative, though,
yes,
was that disclosed to the evaluators as well, and even before the money was made available to Nkwelo Investment?
The part, as I said, Aldrin, that the approval happened in 2013.
Yeah.
In 2013. The MEC for housing, I think it was in Dombi Mekwe, if I'm not mistaken. It was in the DP.
Yeah.
So
and then there was the restructuring that happens, right?
And
the restructuring happens as Paul Mashatile is the MEC for housing or human settlements in Gauteng.
Absolutely.
So I'm asking, at that particular point, was it disclosed to them that actually this person or this developer is a relative to the human settlements MEC? Surely there is a conflict of interest, don't you think so?
In the process, remember, is done through the GPF as the entity of the state. And at the time, I think even checking the source of funding and the KYC process, as much as it was done, it was not as rigorous as we have now. Because even to date, we now have the anti-money laundering policy, politically exposed people, and conflict of interest policies, things that were not prevalent at the time in terms of the policy instruments that were guiding the work of the GPF. But what the report came out with, it did indicate that they looked at the influence and the undue influence and favoritism, and they could not link or could not find that there was any undue influence from the executive authority perspective, Aldrin.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That is the CEO of the Gauteng Partnership Fund, Lindiwe Kwele.
Have you seen our upgraded currency with enhanced security features? Identifying a genuine banknote is easy. Just look, feel, and tilt. Hold the banknote against the light and look for the Big 5 watermark unique to each denomination. Feel the race print on Madiba's portrait and tilt to see the security thread change color. For more, download the SA Reserve Bank Currency app and spend your money with confidence. Our money, our pride. SA Reserve Bank, connecting us.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker account and earn the best rates in the market. More than the top 10 money market funds' average returns. Enjoy unmatched advantages at an interest rate of 8.9% per annum. Plus, if you open your account today, you could win your share of 15 million rand in luxury travel experiences for two. Yes, you heard right. A trip for you and your partner. My bank does that. Open yours today in less than 5 minutes on the banking app at your nearest Absa branch or consult your private banker or call 0860 111 515. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
It's about a little more than just an X on that ballot paper. It's about South Gov knowing what I want, where I'm going, and who I want to take with on this journey. To me, it's not just a vote. It's my democracy. I own it. So show up and register for what you stand for. From Giyani to Umlazi, Pitori to Matatiel. Bring your green barcoded ID, smart card or temporary ID certificate. Stations open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 18 to 19 November 2023. Or register online by going to elections.org.za or call 0800 11 8000. It's your democracy. Own it. Brought to you by the IEC.
SFM invites you to our inaugural public lecture, delivered by the former Chief Justice, Mogoeng Mogoeng. The theme of the lecture is constitutionalism and upholding the rule of law in South Africa. Has corruption and malfeasance eroded the moral fabric of the democratic dispensation? The lecture will take place on the 29th of November 2023 at the SABC M1 Studios in Johannesburg. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It's 26 minutes after 3 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Sampear Ibrahim, who is a Sudan peace building consultant. So there is this report that has come out from the UNHCR. It says that the heavy fighting that erupted in Sudan on the 15th of April has forced more than 6 million people from their homes and created a humanitarian catastrophe that the world must not continue to ignore. That's the urgent message from the United Nations Refugee Agency, the UNHCR's Dominique Hyde, who has just come back from the White Nile state, where she witnessed the deadly impact of months of conflict on the country's most vulnerable people, who are now sheltering in hundreds of displacement camps. For more analysis on the ongoing war in Sudan, we now speak to Sampear Ibrahim. Sampear, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. It's almost like the war, at least on our screens, as well as newspaper reports, disappeared, and the focus has been, of course, what's happening in Palestine and what's happening in Ukraine as well. But what's the situation like from where you're standing?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the listener. And the situation for the last 7 months is really catastrophic. The violence against the civilians in Sudan is verging on pure evil. Both sides, and left wave of destructions, with at least half of the populations in need of the humanitarian aid. And I don't know. I mean, how should African Union or the international community should handle this? And there is an attempt by international community that to bring peace in Jeddah, and I believe so that this peace in Jeddah so far is failed, because they failed to reach to the ceasefire. And without ceasefire, there nobody can go in and help. And now people are really dying because of not bullet, dying because of hunger. It is really catastrophic.
What sort of interventions do you think are required now?
We need ceasefire, absolute ceasefire. Then the international community or whoever need to help, they can get opening corridor for peace, corridor for humanitarian assistance. That is first step. In any war, they have to start by the ceasefire. Am I right? Without ceasefire, you cannot do anything.
And what's the attitude then from Abdel Fattah al-Burhan's army, and then also looking at how the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, is responding?
No, both they're launching wars against each other, I think Rapid Forces almost control Darfur. Almost 95% of Darfur, which is size of France, is in hand of Rapid Forces.
Mm.
And the Khartoum, the most of the big capital cities is being controlled by 90% of the controlled by Rapid Forces. So both they need to extend to gain more land, because if there is a peace agreement, how much you control, how much you have put things in negotiation tables. So now everybody thinks escalating the war because of getting to expand their control areas.
Do you think at all there's a possibility that the reason that the war has almost become forgotten is that when it started in April, a lot of countries, of course, came to evacuate their citizens, including looking at Western nations. And it was, as I said at the beginning of this interview, it's almost like the story then disappeared. Do you think that there is a lack of a concerted effort towards a resolution?
Well, what I should say in this post that, I think this Sudan is, some people say is so big, it have to be divided. South Sudan is become an independent state, and now it seemed to me that over this Sudan should be divided to many. So because there is no international will, international community has no will to come up and put pressure on those parties to the conflicts.
Okay, Sampear Ibrahim.
Right. They can do that way. But
Thank you so much for your time. Sampear Ibrahim there, Sudan's peace building consulting, speaking to us about the situation that's currently unfolding in Sudan, and also Dominique Hyde from the UN Refugee Agency saying that 6 million people have been displaced since the start of this war.
Good afternoon. In the headlines, the Gauteng MEC for Human Settlements and Infrastructure Development, Lebogang Mahile, says Deputy President Paul Mashatile was not interrogated by investigators regarding loans issued by the Gauteng Partnership Fund to his son-in-law in 2013. Judge Rata Mokgotleng has ruled that the vehicle tracking data be submitted as evidence at the Senzomehiwa trial within a trial at the High Court in Pretoria. And Israeli forces have reached the gates of Gaza City's main hospital, the primary target in the battle to seize control of the northern half of the Gaza Strip, where medics say patients, including newborn babies, are dying because of lack of fuel to run generators that provide electricity for incubators. I'll have details on these and other stories at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And it's time for a traffic update with Rob. Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Not a bad run across the Gauteng highway networks at this stage. A little bit of a slowdown on the Mike 1 between Greyston and Woodmead, so we'll keep an eye on that. But it's nothing too desperate at this stage. Get onto the N1 through Midrand and up through Pretoria. It's looking very good. Durban, the N2 south. That's under pressure from Umgeda Road through the construction down towards Spaghetti Junction. And Cape Town, quite a bit going on there today. The elevated freeway heading out of town towards the Woodstock exit in the roadworks. That's reasonably heavy. Queues from Batenbroek Street. The N7 going south, all choked up through Goodwood, pressure down to Four Tracker Road. And if you're on your way to Paarl, there's been a truck crash just after the R44 Klapmots exit, so there is some queuing pressure as you approach that central Paarl area. N1 outbound. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Good afternoon, Tumza. Hope that you missed me. I missed
Welcome
you.
back.
Welcome back. Tell us what's coming up in sport.
Right, straight to your sport. Let's start things off with cricket this hour with some great news for the Proteas. Captain Themba Bavuma took part in an optional training session for more than 30 minutes at the Eden Gardens today. He ran a couple of laps around the outfield before doing some fitness drills under the watchful eye of team's physiotherapists and the strength and conditioning coach. And it's understood that Bavuma's fitness will continue continue to be monitored ahead of Thursday's semi-final, and that the team management believe that as a captain, he will be given the best chance to play. So only time will tell if he'll be playing on Thursday or not. Meanwhile, Morne Morkel has quit as Pakistan's fast bowling coach a month before his contract was expiring, and there's no reason that has been given yet. He was appointed in June this year as part of a reshuffle of the coaching staff, which saw Mickey Arthur return as team director. In football, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Rulani Mokoena says that there won't be no room for complacency in the domestic league at the club following their African Football League win. After winning the lucrative 76 million rand prize money, Mokoena was asked how he plans to motivate the group to double their efforts for a lot less. So the thing is, should the Proteas retain their DStv Premiership title and then go on to win the Nedbank Cup, that's only 22 million rand at stake. But Mokoena insists that his charges will continue to apply the same work ethic.
They know they'll be in big trouble with me. Now there'll be big issues. This is a special group. Believe you me, we lost in Casablanca 2-1. We had a training session the next day with a couple of the players that didn't play, and I can tell you, we trained like a team that had just lost 5-0.
A big congratulations to the Mamelodi Sundowns nation. Elsewhere, Manchester United defender Harry Maguire says that he feels that he's now getting his reward for remaining at Old Trafford to prove that he's worthy of a place in Erik ten Hag's starting lineup. Maguire made his 5th Premier League start of the season with the 1-0 win against Luton at Old Trafford on Saturday. And it's more than the most expected at this point in the campaign, given that he had been restricted to a couple of late substitute appearances until the end of September. However, Maguire remained confident that he would win his place back, and thus far he started the club's past 8 matches in all competitions. In rugby, Stormers coach John Dobson says that the weekend setback at Benetton in the United Rugby Championship has put them back significantly. Now, following 2 victories in South Africa, the Cape Town side suffered their 2nd consecutive loss on tour, this time around to the Italians, a game that Dobson says that they had plans for before their next trip to champions Munster.
We want to go to Munster in a position to attack, not on the defensive, and we needed this win. This was one of the wins we wanted on tour, so it's hugely disappointing for us, and I thought we'd done it, without playing particularly well, we've probably done enough to win it, I think Joseph Dwyer at the end there thinks it's the 5, thinks it's the try line, but Moore's going, we would have got over the line anyway, and that was 4 more log points, it puts a lot of pressure on next week, but we've been in these positions before, and we do fight back, and we will fight back.
In tennis, Novak Djokovic will end the year as world number 1 for a record 8th time. This is after he beat Holger Rune at the ATP Finals in Italy. The 24-time Grand Slam champion claimed a 7-6, 6-7 and 6-3 win in his opening green group match at the season-ending event on Saturday. And victory for Djokovic extends his winning run to 19 consecutive matches. The 36-year-old won 3 slams this year to set a men's record of 24 career major titles. With that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Khapele.
So Sharon at office was telling me the way drip is so expensive these days. She's now waiting for her old clothes to come back into fashion. I say, Joza, while you're waiting, why not let your money do the things in a Nedbank Just Invest account, where you can get your money after 24 hours notice? Oganchani voiceman.
Injalo, Mabel. Earn up to 9% interest. Anyone can open an investment account via the Money app in under 2 minutes. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's on the interest rates apply.
It's about a little more than just an X on that ballot paper. It's about self-gov knowing what I want, where I'm going, and who I want to take with on this journey. To me, it's not just a vote. It's my democracy. I own it. So show up and register for what you stand for. From Giyani to Umlazi, Pitori to Matatiel. Bring your green bar-coded ID, smart card or temporary ID certificate. Stations open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 18 to 19 November 2023. Or register online by going to elections.org.za or call 0800 11 8000. It's your democracy. Own it. Brought to you by the IEC.
Mzansi, we thank you for what you did yesterday, today, and what you will do tomorrow to meet your tax obligations. By submitting your income tax returns on time and keeping your personal and banking information up to date, you have made your tax matters daily matters. Our gratitude as SARS is immeasurable. We thank you for contributing to our country's prosperity. Visit sars.gov.za to keep your details updated. Your tax matters. SARS at your service.
The award-winning SAFM playwriting competition is back.
I remember a time when my grandmother, she would make sure that she never missed that story.
SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound.
I mean, I remember Pipito, she remember all of those. It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it was fiction.
The theater of the mind. And to create a 1-hour radio play in English, get writing now and submit your play before the 22nd of January 2024. For more information, visit safm.co.za. You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Well, let's take your voice notes on 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. A reminder again, our studio line is 086-000-2032. So coming up in the next short while, we'll be in conversation with the Gold One Mines head of legal, Zaid Hassan, as the protest by AMCU members still continue at the Springs mine. So we'll be speaking to them about that. They were actually supposed to resume services today, so we'll ask him what the latest is on that. We'll also then speak to Joseph Matunja, who is the president of AMCU. Taking your calls on 086-000-2032 and your voice notes on 0614-104-107.
Good afternoon, Aldrin Radio SA listeners. I'm happy, Aldrin, when we are back. Really, it was tough. I'm not undermining anyone, my friend, but we found you. It's like an aeroplane. We found a pilot. Thank you, Aldrin. Sam.
Good afternoon, Mr. M. Captain. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, what does it make? I mean, are they feeling happy when you're killing the children and the women and the Gaza and destroying the hospital and the school and the UN territory and the UN destination area, really? Especially you destroying the hospital, I mean, which is against international law, really. But what they're going to gain at the end of the day, Israel, I mean, nothing they will gain, really. Even if you read of all the Palestine, I mean, what are you going to benefit? Nothing. So I don't understand. Even the American, European, they're supporting this guy, but they can see there's a problem, but they just want to supporting. I don't understand. So end of the day, European and Israel, America, they are same, really. It's not, I mean, Israel were killing, America telling what to do, Israel. They are the one who behind all this, I mean, they're supplying the gun, really. Killing the children, it's very sad, I mean, really. It's very sad. And it's destroying the hospital and the school. It's very sad.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Let's speak to Zaid Hassan, who is the Gold One Mines head of legal. So the drama continues at the Gold One Mine in Springs as AMCU members stage a protest. Workers down tool last week demanding that the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union, AMCU, be recognized as a majority union in the mine, as they claim to have more members than the National Union of Mine Workers. It's understood that operations at the mine have been halted due to this ongoing protest. Ziad now joining us on the line. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. Can you confirm that operations continue to be suspended?
Hi, good afternoon. Yes. So operations were suspended initially last week, Thursday, because we felt that we couldn't guarantee the safety of our employees. The intention was that we would get back to normal operations today. There were again several flare-ups over the weekend, and late yesterday afternoon we took a decision that operations should remain suspended for the foreseeable future, and at least until such time as we can guarantee a safe working environment for all employees. Early this morning, we then got reports of a larger crowd than was present over the weekend. So in the region of 200 to 300 people that were blocking the entrances to the mine and as well as the exit points. The situation became quite hostile, and one employee's vehicle was set alight who had tried to get in the morning. There were two other occupants in that vehicle. Luckily, nobody was harmed. But yes, so the situation had certainly gotten a lot more tense this morning.
And do you know if anyone has been arrested?
Yes, our information is that 11 people have been arrested and have been charged with various offences. There is a fairly heavy police presence at the site, as well as additional private security.
Can you confirm if these are AMCU members and employees of the company that you are the head of legal for?
So the first question is a little bit harder. We can confirm that at least 6 of those that are arrested are employees. As to which union they belong to, technically all employees still belong to the NUM until such time as the closed shop agreement is dissolved, which is another process that is ongoing. But we certainly have a strong suspicion that those arrested are affiliated at least to AMCU. They were all gathering, many of them wearing AMCU T-shirts, AMCU flags, and chanting and singing AMCU songs. So we're fairly certain that they are, whilst not officially members of AMCU, certainly we feel or we have reason to believe sympathetic to the AMCU position.
Okay, so then the process in terms of the recognition of AMCU, how far are you in that process?
So last week, AMCU filed an urgent application at the Labour Court against NUM, seeking an order that would compel the NUM to hold a ballot within 5 days of a judgment in its favour, which they expect to get on Thursday. So that would take us potentially to next week, Tuesday. We have today filed papers in response to that application. We've indicated clearly that we are in support of the application and we are in support of the timelines that AMCU seeks in terms of that application. So we've simultaneously written to AMCU urging restraint from them in that they've now prescribed a process and a time frame at the Labour Court. So we are prepared to respect those time frames, and we urge that they communicate to their members to stop illegally gathering outside the premises and to do their bit to start normalizing the situation.
And there's been no confirmation, or do you know of any evidence that AMCU has actually done that?
Not at this stage. We are not aware that any communication has gone out to AMCU's members, and we haven't seen any drastic change in the situation.
Okay, so Ziad, when the stop orders were handed over to the company by AMCU, and AMCU was arguing at the time that these are valid stop orders and therefore some of the employees at the company are members of AMCU. Why didn't the company process those?
So the nature of a closed shop agreement is that the closed shop agreement remains valid until it's legally challenged and legally dissolved. At the time when AMCU presented us with those stop orders, they had not brought a legitimate challenge to the closed shop agreement. Now, it was only a few weeks ago when they handed us a petition of something in the region of 1,200 signatures. Those signatures, in terms of the closed shop agreement, constitute a legitimate challenge to the continuity of that closed shop agreement. It's then the onus of NUM to communicate to its members and to facilitate the logistics around holding a ballot to determine whether all of those employees elect to either stick with the closed shop agreement or to have that agreement dissolved. And that's the process that we currently find ourselves in.
So does the closed shop agreement not also have a criteria to it, a condition to it rather, that the union should be auditing its membership at a place of employment where it has representation every 3 years at least?
It does. It does
Okay.
prescribe
So
that be
that
done.
hasn't happened with the NUM. Can you confirm?
It has not
Okay.
happened. No. So they've not conducted a ballot since 2012.
They've not conducted a ballot since 2012. And then what was the company's position around that?
So our position all along is as soon as we received information that AMCU are threatening the majority of NUM. We've been in constant communication with the NUM, urging that they facilitate a process to verify the numbers and the support which they claim to have. That would be the only logical and legal way that we can determine whether the majority of the employees elect to continue with the closed shop agreement or to have that dissolved and another union to represent them.
So this you say since 2012 they haven't conducted a ballot, so it's over about 10 years now that they haven't conducted a ballot, and the company was still okay with having NUM being the representative of these mine workers, even though it has failed to conduct an audit which is required, a ballot.
That is correct.
So does this mean that the company is also party to this illegality?
Well,
failure
I'm not sure I would refer to it as illegality. I think we've certainly been in a situation where there's been relative labor stability since 2012, and it's really only 5 months ago when AMCU came knocking on our door and presented us with a petition and names of employees who they claimed have now will now support AMCU or would prefer to be represented by AMCU. So yes, you're right that we should have had a ballot and we should have had several ballots within the last 10 years, but there wasn't a legitimate threat to the NUM position up until a few months ago.
But isn't the 3 years a requirement, an actual requirement that the union should be doing that?
It is a requirement, yes.
And it hasn't happened since 2012?
It has not.
Okay.
No.
Thank you so much for your time. Zaid Hassam is the head of legal at Gold One Mine.
Tune in for a conversation on diabetes on Afternoon Express. We're joined by physician and endocrinologist Dr. Jocelyn Hellig to unpack the common symptoms and risk factors of this disease. Plus, we look at how to manage diabetes through lifestyle choices with dietitian Kath McGaw. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker account and earn the best rates in the market. More than the top 10 money market funds average returns. Enjoy unmatched advantages at an interest rate of 8.9% per annum. Plus, if you open your account today, you could win your share of 15 million rand in luxury travel experiences for 2. Yes, you heard right. A trip for you and your partner. My bank does that. Open yours today in less than 5 minutes on the banking app at your nearest Absa branch or consult your private banker or call 0860 111 515. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Hello, Lisa. Hope you're well. Listen, I went to this car heaven place We Buy Cars with Henriette to sell the caravans and the jet skis she must now got from the divorce because she's never going onto the Vaal River again, she says. So We Buy Cars bought it from her for a great price. Now, you should tell your husband to sell all of those project cars and take you to the Maldives. Or just give them a call because they come to your house and then they buy your car somewhere so on the spot where they're so gerieflik.
We Buy Cars, the best place to sell your car by far.
28 years ago, 2 great outfits of global rugby met in the Rugby World Cup final.
The Springboks and the All Blacks.
The Boks had a good day in the office in 1995 and lifted the Webb Ellis Cup on home soil. Amabokoboko have silenced the All Blacks once again.
At the Rugby World Cup final France 2023 in search of their 4th title. Hala la Zanzi Africa.
Back-to-back victors and 4-time champions of the Rugby World Cup.
An extra seat has been booked for a flight back to Africa Tonga for the Webb Ellis Cup to travel with the world's best rugby national team. Amabokoboko. Congratulations to the Springboks.
Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
#SAFMBTH.
We continue our focus on the standoff between the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union members, or potential members, who are employed at Gold One Mine and the mining company Gold One Mine. As you just heard from Ziad Hassam, the Gold One Mine's head of legal, that operations continue to be suspended. We conversation next with Joseph Matunjwa, who is the president of AMCU. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Hi, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Okay, I want to start off where we left off the conversation with Ziad on the recognition of AMCU and also the failure to have the three-year cycle auditing by the NUM. What's your take on it? And also that they say that the only time this became an issue was when you made the application, at least for the recognition, as well as the stop orders that were submitted.
Yeah, thank you. There is no stand off between AMCO and NUM. As you correctly say, these are the potential members to be members of AMCO. And also, I don't think this interview was supposed to be channeled to us as AMCO. Since legally so, in terms of the Act, we don't have members. And we haven't called for any protest at the mine. So this interview solely is between the NUM and the employer in these instances.
Sure, but these are mine workers who want to be represented by AMCU, and therefore that's why AMCU then becomes a crucial stakeholder in the conversation and considering your litigation as well against the NUM.
No, you are correct, but the fact of the matter, I didn't hear clearly why the mine was closed. Why the operation was suspended, because according to us, the mine was suspended due to the community protest. So if it was a community protest, I don't know where does it link us as AMCO to the current protest.
He speaks about members.
Later, there are members or are workers who are part of the protest. Why there is a protest? Why are they protesting? Are they not supposed to be at work? So if they're at work, surely there will be no protest.
Yeah, they're not at work because operations have been suspended.
The
operations have been suspended because of the violence that has flared up. You just heard now of a car that has also been torched, and they are claiming, that's the reason why I asked whether or not he can say whether these are employees of the companies and technically also potential members of AMCU, and he says that there were people who were wearing AMCU t-shirts, so making the affiliation to AMCU, but there were 6 who were arrested who are employees.
So then the question is?
The question is, I'm trying to locate you in this conversation why it is important to speak to an AMCU, because here are people who are protesting, and they say that they want the recognition that AMCU should be recognized. AMCU should be a recognized union. Remember at the beginning of the conversation, you said you're not too sure why you are doing this interview.
Yes, indeed, because our process is very clear. Our process is within the legal framework. We'll be meeting with the company in court, whereby we interdicted the company and the NUM, of which both parties are signatory to the collective agreement of Section 26 of the closed shop agreement. As you correctly question him, the validity of this closed shop agreement, and then when they last test whether the workers, they are still willing to be part of the closed shop agreement, of which more than 10 years they haven't. So the agreement itself is flawed. I mean, it's illegal agreement, if I may say that. But the company, because of the convenient relation that they had, it didn't take it, the workers into confidence to check whether they still want to be part of the closed shop agreement, and also to compel the NUM to conduct those ballot tests, because the very closed shop agreement, it infringes the rights of the workers in terms of the Constitution, freedom of association. Hence, the Labor Relations Act put it clear that every 3 years you have to test whether your members are still comfortable only to be presented by this union. And in their agreement, in the actual fact, they reduced it into 2 years, of which that has never happened, of which the company, I believe, should have terminated that particular agreement if they see that NUM was not complying with the agreement.
Yeah. What's your take on the violence that is playing out, and also possibility of there being fighting amongst the mine workers themselves?
I don't know about the violence that is happening, but no one can condone any violence, even whether you differ with the employer or as workers among themselves. But the company should come clear why the workers are not reporting to duty, why they are outside the working space at this point in time. And then also to differentiate between the community, because what we've been told is that the community was protesting over the weekend, and subsequent that the company closed the mine. So remember, some of the communities are part of the employees of the mine. But there, I cannot say much because I'm not there at this point in time. And I don't have any much information. But the fact of the matter, whether the workers are wearing AMCO T-shirts, whether members or the workers are expressing their desire to be part of AMCO, that does not take away the responsibility of the employer and the trade union, which is the NUM as a majority, because in terms of the law, they still belong to NUM.
Yeah. He has now said that they've made an appeal to you as AMCO to speak to some of your potential members to try and quell the tension. Of course, you are contesting the idea of it being related to what's happening between the union as well as, the workers as well as the company. But would you actually do that? Would you actually go and meet the non-members of AMCO and say, hey guys,
no, I mean, technically the employer wants to channel this unprotected action against AMCO. We do not have any legal standing, because even when the first sit-in took place, the employer refused to sit with us. He said we are not recognized. So why now should we be called in? He should call the NUM and go and address those workers, because they are their members in terms of the closed-shop agreement, irrespective. The last meeting I held after the sit-in was resolved, I told all the workers, you belong to the National Union of Mine Workers. You are not on trial protesting. Therefore, if the employer calls you, go back to work, you have to report for duty, because you are technically not members of AMCO, which still belong to NUM, until all the outstanding processes are concluded in terms of the Labor Relations Act. Then we can legitimately say you are members, of which they did present themselves, and the employer closed the gate. Technically, it's an unlawful lockout, and now you try to say the members or the workers themselves, they are causing violence, instead of saying the community started the protest. In the result, then they close the mine for the safety.
Joseph Matunja there, the president of AMCO. It's a minute after 4 o'clock. It's time for the news with N. Musa. Good afternoon.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories, Deputy President not interviewed by investigators regarding Gauteng Partnership Fund loans and situation in Gaza to dominate Ramaphosa's visit to the Gulf state. Good afternoon. Gauteng MEC for Human Settlements and Infrastructure Development, Lebogang Maile, says the Deputy President Paul Mashatile was not interrogated by investigators regarding loans issued by the Gauteng Partnership Fund to his son-in-law in 2013. Maile maintains there was no need for Mashatile to be interviewed by the investigators, as there was no conflict of interest detected on his part. The probe followed allegations of undue granting of a more than 7 million rand loan to Mashatile's son-in-law Nceba Nonkwelo to build student accommodation. Mahile released the report into the findings of a probe he instituted in July this year at a media briefing in Sandton.
Despite the fact that there were allegations that the Deputy President might have influenced unduly the awarding of the loan. It was found that that's not the case and that there was no conflict of interest and that there were some shortcomings on the project appraisal and that more comprehensive due diligence and procedural steps ought to have occurred at the time in 2013. And the report also says that the trustees who took or participated in this decision may attract liability as set out in Section 9 of the Trust Property Act.
The fund CEO Lindiwe Kwele says due process was adhered to when the Gauteng Partnership Fund approved the 7 million rand loan to Nonkwelo. She refuted claims of a 30 million rand loan allocation as initially reported in the media.
First of all, I think I need to clarify that even the report does clarify that the money that was dispersed from the GPF was actually utilized for the intention, the purpose it was intended for. So there was no malfeasance, there was no maladministration or corruption in as far as that is concerned. We also have an asset disposal framework which was not available at the time. There was a settlement agreement where as the entity were in breach, we have to use our mechanic security measures to recover that process. When this process started, we needed to make sure that we are not seen to be covering up and everything, but the work is underway.
Judge Rata Mokwetleng has ruled that the vehicle tracking data be submitted as evidence at the Senzo trial within a trial at the High Court in Pretoria. The state submitted that the tracking data is crucial to determine when Tanzi was taken when travelling with the investigating officer Sergeant Vusimusi Mukhane after his arrest in June 2020. Tanzi, who is one of the 5 accused in the Mehiwa murder trial, alleges he was assaulted and tortured at various locations before being forced to sign confession statements. Judge Mokwetleng has ruled that the vehicle tracking evidence is relevant and will assist the court.
This evidence is relevant. Like I say, it's interlinked to the evidence which was given by Mohano, and it is also interlinked to the assertion which were put to this witness that that vehicle traversed certain locations and that vehicle facilitated the assault on accused number 4. So that's the cogency of that evidence, I believe, can assist this court in establishing. I've quoted all the authorities. I don't have to read them. Is it in the interest of justice to allow that evidence? Is that evidence, is it relevant in this case? On both accounts, I find that it is, and consequently the state is allowed to lead that evidence.
The worsening situation in Gaza is likely to dominate talks when President Cyril Ramaphosa meets with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, tomorrow. This will be Ramaphosa's first state visit to the Gulf state. South Africa and Qatar will celebrate 30 years of diplomatic ties next year. The Deputy President Paul Mashatile has meanwhile concluded his visit to Saudi Arabia. Kaili Tlekumalu has more.
The government of South Africa and Qatar share deep concern regarding the conflict in Gaza, Palestine. They're worried about human catastrophe and violation of international humanitarian law in the besieged Strip. On economic front, Qatar is South Africa's 5th largest trading partner in the Middle East. Sasol has a 49% shareholding with Qatar Petroleum, and it runs the world's first commercial-scale gas-to-liquid plant. President Ramaphosa will be joined by a high-level business delegation to explore opportunities in the Gulf. President Ramaphosa and Emir of Qatar, Al Thani, will also look at geopolitical issues currently affecting the world.
And finally, Israeli forces have reached the gates of Gaza City's main hospital, the primary target in their battle to seize control of the northern half of the Gaza Strip, where medics say patients, including newborn babies, are dying because of lack of fuel to run generators that provide electricity for incubators. The Gaza Health Ministry spokesperson Ashraf Al-Qidra, who was inside Al-Shifa Hospital, says 32 patients died in the past 3 days, including 3 newborn babies, as a result of the siege of the hospital and the cut-off of its power. Israel has accused Hamas of using medical facilities as operational bases in their battle against Israeli troops. Hamas has denied the accusation. Recapping the top story, the Gauteng MEC for Human Settlements and Infrastructure Development, Lebogang Mahile, says Deputy President Paul Mashatile was not interrogated by investigators regarding loans issued by the Gauteng Partnership Fund to his son-in-law in 2013. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
In your sports this hour, Fabregas gets a senior coaching role. Police confirm no bombing at Mamelodi Sundowns AFL final at Loftus. And Australia looks to peak at the right time at the World Cup against South Africa. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
There's been a crash on Joburg's Mike 1 North this afternoon, just up by Grayston Drive. In fact, it's just before you get to Grayston Drive, so there's quite a bit of pressure coming through from Glenhove Road, from Houghton Estate up through Melrose into Sandton, and it's a big enough crash to be holding traffic on the southbound as well, so some delays there between Grayston and Corlett Drive. N1 through Midrand looks okay today. Crossing to Durban, there's some queuing pressure on the N2 southbound. That's coming from Umgeda Road, very slowly into Spaghetti Junction. And Cape Town today, a bit of traffic around the central area. Baton trucks very heavy on the way out towards the elevated freeway. And then you've got some delays coming in from the waterfront into that particular area as well. So if you're just leaving the waterfront Port Road, that's all very slow. There's quite a big backlog coming off the South Peninsula today. Main Road, slightly different pattern, but traffic sitting from Fishhook up through Cork Bay and on to St James. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
We don't normally do this, but from time to time an official will phone in response to something. We've had a call from a member of the provincial legislature in KwaZulu-Natal, Stembiso Mshengu. Stembiso, thank you for listening and thank you for calling in. Any chance you can please help Sandile? Sounds like a very tough situation for him.
I would be talking to the MSc of Human Settlement about this matter. I would also be talking to the mayor of Umsunduzi. I'm actually more touched hearing that he is blind. We have an obligation to intervene in such instances.
Stembiso, thank you. I really appreciate it. We have the number and we'll pass it on to you immediately.
Please do so, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stembiso Mshengu, all right, really appreciate that. From the KwaZulu-Natal legislature. We can't promise help, but where we can, we'll happily connect people. I think Sandile's story is going to be with us for a long time.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
10 past 4. 10 past 4. Bah, bah.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 10 past 4. Coming up on the show in this hour, we speak to Jack Bloom, who is the DA Gauteng Shadow Health MEC, as we look on his call that the Gauteng Health Department should immediately stop procuring food from hospitals or hospital providers in Limpopo. This is now the service providers that are providing the hospitals in Limpopo with bread, eggs, meat and vegetables. So we'll be speaking to Jack Bloom about that. And then also in conversation with Joy Mason, legal officer of Unite, #Unite Behind, as we look at the case against the suspended judge, Dintswalo Makubela, which has again been postponed, and this is in relation to the violation of the separation of powers principle. While she was a judge, she was also serving on the board of a process. So that conversation coming up. Also speaking to Pearl Makubani, SABC News reporter, to give us an update on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
#SAFMBTH.
Afternoon, Aldrin. We all know nothing ever went all right from the government. There always has to be something outside the government. I mean, we are a free country today, not because of the government. And it's true, the duty of every citizen is to protect fellow citizens from its government. Yes, you come back now, there have been a lot of developments. Ministers were hijacked, and now there is all this pep-up against crime. There is crime summit. Yeah, good things are happening. Yes, let's all be positive. This is Nikki Way. Babecha, thank you.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
It's 13 minutes after 4 o'clock. In conversation next with Pearl Makubane, SABC News reporter. So the state in the Senzo Mayo murder trial says it will be in the interest of justice for the vehicle tracking data to be submitted as evidence. State prosecutor George Baloyi has submitted has submitted in his heads of argument within the trial at the High Court in Pretoria. 5 men are on trial for the murder of Senzo Mayo in October 2014. Accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, alleges he was assaulted and tortured at various locations. Into the signing the confession statement, the investigating officer Sergeant Vusumuzi Mohane denies this, and the state prosecutor George Baloyi says tracking data will clarify all the routes travelled. For the latest on this, we speak to SABC News reporter Pearl Makubane. Pearl, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. What was the court's response into this argument being raised by the state?
Good afternoon, Aldrin and the listeners. Well, the court ruled in favor of the state, saying that this evidence is relevant and would shed much-needed light into serious allegations that were made by Bongani Ntanzi, that various stops were made, and this is where the alleged torture happened. So if there's something to prove that, indeed the vehicle went a certain route, then the court needs to hear that evidence, and therefore George Baloyi has submitted that data, which Sergeant Mohane has now gone through.
What is it exactly that would they be able to get out of getting the route that was followed by the car while Bongani Ntanzi was allegedly being assaulted?
One of the things that Bongani alleges is that just before the confession statements were made, they stopped at Alberton next to a garage where he was assaulted, and also went to some deserted place in Orlando where he was assaulted again. Sergeant Mohane has denied this. However, when he was going through the data, just talking about the times and where they stopped, there is a place in Alberton where the vehicle they were traveling in stopped. But when he was asked where was this, he said that he can't recall exactly the name, but he remembered they did stop for water and some chips and made their way to Vosloorus. There's also now something he's also revealed, that from Alberton and Ukurulin side, they went back to Soweto in Moroka. There, the car shows that it was stationary for 2 hours. And when he was asked what was happening in those 2 hours, as we recall, he claims that the late Sergeant Mabena, who worked with the intelligence, was waiting for keys and a memory stick, and they waited for about 2 hours. So this should be interesting what the defense, will ask him at that point, because Ntanzi alleges is adamant that in Soweto he was assaulted and papers were given to him, and he was forced to sign at that point.
Where are we now in the trial?
We have adjourned for the day. Mohano is back tomorrow morning just to go over the stops. We do know that there was a day when Ntanzi was actually booked out of his cell for 17 hours. So we're hoping that more data that reveals tomorrow will give clarity as to what happened and what transpired, and if indeed Sergeant Mohane is telling the truth about the stops, denying the stops, or is it Ntanzi that is telling the truth? So he's going to go through more of the data and tell us exactly what was happening in the 17 hours when Ntanzi was booked out.
Thank you for your time. Paul Makubane, the SABC News reporter on the Senzo Mayo murder trial.
#SAFMBTH.
It's 17 minutes after 4 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Jack Bloom, who is the DA Gauteng Shadow Health MEC. So the Gauteng Department of Health has spent more than 23 million rand securing food items such as bread, eggs, meat and vegetables since August from firms contracted to its Limpopo counterpart. And the DA in Gauteng wants the Provincial Department of Health's contracts to obtain food for all its hospitals from Limpopo stopped and investigated. Jack Bloom is now joining us on the line. Jack, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. So what's your concern with the procurement of these items is it from a different province? Is that the issue, or is it from a firm that is actually providing the service to hospitals in Limpopo?
Well, there's a variety of disturbing issues. First of all, it's very unusual to piggyback on a contract from a neighbouring province for a for an easily obtainable item, namely food. Normally this would happen if it was a specialized service or piece of equipment. But of course, food is very easily obtainable. You could just go to your local supermarket, and there's lots of suppliers in Gauteng that are able to provide this. So we have to ask why they felt the need to piggyback on Limpopo's contract. And secondly, I got a list of 54 companies from which food supplies were being obtained. 7 of them are construction companies. One's a motor workshop. One's an engineering company. It's just very, very suspicious. Do these companies actually exist? Are we getting value for money? Why are we paying for extra transport? Remember, this is perishable food. Why would a Johannesburg hospital, for instance, want to get bread, fresh fruit and vegetables and eggs, chicken and meat from Limpopo, if nothing else?
Maybe because the province actually has a large agricultural sector, and maybe you cut out the middleman. Could that be a possibility at all?
Well, we can do that in Gauteng. Gauteng has lots of local producers. In fact, the Premier of the province has quite reasonably called for township producers and suppliers to get preference. So a hospital like Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital should do everything they can to get bread locally, eggs locally, anything that can be done more close to source and empower the poorest people. But instead, we have a very suspicious contract. And that reminds me, actually, of the Tembisa Hospital contract. Who knows if these companies actually exist? Are they actually supplying the product? Are we overpaying for it? So at the very least, there's transport costs, and bread is not going to be fresh if it takes too long to come from Limpopo. Just makes no sense at all, and I don't have a good feeling about this. I think it needs to be investigated. But the excuse of the Gauteng Health Department is, they don't have a contract in place with local food suppliers. But that's the easiest thing to do. It's lots of competing food suppliers, so they could easily do it. It's not like a specialist piece of medical equipment. So it's either gross incompetence or something even worse.
Yeah. So how long has this procurement been happening in this particular fashion?
Well, it's been several months, and it's still continuing. In fact, they say it will continue until they get local contracts, and they've spent more than 23 million rand so far on that. So, as I said, why don't we have local contracts in place? There was a problem earlier this year where we had shortages of food at Gauteng hospitals, but the reason for that was that they weren't paying the suppliers on time. Now, if that's the problem, you're going to have the same problem paying the Limpopo suppliers. So I think it's a deeply rooted issue in Gauteng Health Department.
Could that be the reason, perhaps that they've gone this particular route? That because of the issues that were faced before, and that they still owe some of these service providers, let's try to get into another contract with other service providers who can, at least in the meantime, fill the gap?
Well, you could do that with other alternative food suppliers in Gauteng. And of course, the root of the issue is that the department doesn't pay its suppliers on time. So I'd be very interested to know if for whatever reason they pay these Limpopo suppliers on time, but they're not paying Gauteng suppliers on time. Look, what we really need is an efficient Gauteng Health Department that goes for the lowest cost, competitive, quality providing supplier, and that should be very easy to do in the fields in the food industry, because we have lots of competing suppliers, lots of different arrangements that could be made, but I would not have expected that one of those arrangements is to get it from a neighbouring province with the transport and other expenses that would be included.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That is Jack Bloom, who is the Shadow MEC for Health for the Democratic Alliance in Gauteng. 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. My problem with South African government is that, government officials are so greedy. And in their greediness, you see corruption. So what's gonna what's going to change? What's going to change in the next 5 years when the ANC carries on being in government? What's going to change? What changes are they going to bring? What hope are they giving the nation?
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
23 minutes after 4 o'clock. Coming up next, we're in conversation with Joe Mason, who's the legal officer of Unite Behind, or hashtag Unite Behind. Today, the Judicial Conduct Tribunal held a hearing investigating the allegations that suspended Judge Nana Makubela had violated the separation of powers principle by holding an office of the court while also serving on an interim board of a state rail agency, PRASA, between October 2017 and March 2018. The hearing has been postponed to January 2024 on the basis of the postponement was the tariffs and her legal fees with the state attorney. This is not the first time that the tribunal has been postponed prior to a testimony in August 2023. The chair of the tribunal, Judge President Ahmed Yapi, did share his concerns on whether the suspended judge will appear in person ahead of the next proceedings. Our next guest first wrote to the Judicial Service Commission 6 years ago on this matter. They share their concerns given the details regarding this process, the challenges they have faced with the legal fees, and and the call that it is made that the state attorney should not be used as an ATM. Joe Mason, now joining us on the line. Joe, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. What do you make of the postponement?
Well, it's, as you say, not the first time that the tribunal has been postponed. And the last time that it was postponed, which was on the 1st of August, it was postponed to today. The tribunal stated that it would go ahead with the hearings regardless of whether Judge Makubele had sorted out her issues with legal fees and representation. And to our surprise, it was postponed again, and we weren't afforded an opportunity to be heard before it was postponed, although we were present in the hearing today to discuss when the new dates would be decided. And so we can only hope that at the next hearing that it won't be postponed, as the tribunal has said again that they'll be proceeding regardless of the issues with Judge Makubele's legal fees.
And that's the issue, right, is that that constitutional right that you have to legal representation. The state attorney has agreed and said that sure, we will cover the fees. However, though, the issue is around the rate. And I don't know, how do you work around something like that?
So the JSC Act actually doesn't state that a judge who's investigated for gross misconduct in the tribunal, she actually doesn't have the right to representation. We, of course, think it would be preferable and fair for her to receive representation, but at what cost to the state, right? So, currently on her own evidence, she says that her legal fees and her legal bill currently is 3 million rand. And that's just for the tribunal this year. And as you said, this matter has been running since, for about 6 years. And so, I guess the question is how much are we willing to sacrifice for representation? She has a battery of lawyers representing her, some of the most expensive counsel in the country. And although the agreement with the state attorney is that she will have to pay the money back if she loses or when she loses, she's already said that she doesn't have the money to pay the current bill. So, it's unlikely that we would be able to get that money back. And NGOs bringing these kinds of complaints, like Unite Behind, have to foot the bill ourselves. We've spent about 1.5 million on this case so far, and there's no way for. It's not like a normal court case where we could be awarded costs at the end. there's no mechanism for that.
Yep.
So it seems to be an unfair system.
So how do you think then we can resolve that particular issue, and also taking into consideration, as I said, the representation of a legal or a lawyer, perhaps during a tribunal of this nature? We went through the same matter when it came to Judge President John Hlophe, and then also now with the former public protector as well. The Constitutional Court affirmed the right to legal representation.
So, I mean, I think she should be represented, but there should have been an inquiry beforehand into, how much she would be allowed to spend on representation, and that is now the issue between her and the state attorney. And we're sort of in a stuck between a rock and a hard place. So we don't want these exorbitant fees to be paid, but we also don't want it to be used as like a Stalingrad tactic for further delays. So for us, we believe that she should be afforded representation, but that it should be reasonable, and that the state attorney and her should work it out as quick as possible, and that the tribunal, has the power to subpoena the state attorney to find out more information, because currently the amount of information has been lacking. And the tribunal shouldn't entertain any further delays. Between the 1st of August and now, in order to try and resolve the disputes, it seems that she only made one phone call, sent 2 emails, and sent 1 letter in those 3 months. You'd think if you were really trying to sort out this dispute, you would try a little harder than that. And so I think it's difficult to say legally what can be done and what can be changed. But I think the legal actors, the tribunal, the state attorney, need to take a stronger stance and need to nip this in the bud. Otherwise, we will see a Judge Hlophe sort of situation again, where this has gone for 5 years, but Judge Hlophe, that complaint ran over 10 years. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Joe Mason, who is the legal officer for #UniteBehind. It's 4:30. It's time for the news headlines with N. Musa.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Aldrin. In the headlines, COPE has terminated the membership of its speaker in the city of Johannesburg, Lean Makubele. Makubele was seen in pictures of a new organization, which COPE said was in breach of the party's constitution. Gauteng MEC for Human Settlements and Infrastructure Development, Lebogang Mahile, says Deputy President Paul Mashatile was not interrogated by investigators regarding loans issued by the Gauteng Partnership Fund to his son-in-law in 2013. And the case against a 30-year-old man arrested for stabbing his wife multiple times at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology has been postponed to the 20th of this month in the Bellville Magistrates Court in Cape Town. And Musa Greg House will have details on these and other stories at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon once again. Rob Byrne has a traffic update.
Yeah, here's one to avoid. The Mike 1 North in Joburg. There's been a crash at Grayston Drive, just before Grayston Drive. Traffic's heavy all the way back to sort of Houghton Drive territory in Parktown. So you've got options of Louis Buerta, you've got options of Rivonia Road as your alternative routes to get north. That'll be Oxford, Rivonia and Louis Buerta, both sides of the highway. Some load shedding at Benoni, that's worth a mention. There's some queuing pressure there. Atlas Road around that North Rand Road junction. Durban, the N2 South, fairly heavy now. The queue halfway between Queen Nundy and Inanda Road. Once you pick it up, you sit all the way down to 4 level. And Cape Town, some queuing pressure on the N2 out of town from Borchard's Quarry. Very slow towards the R300. And worth a mention, the main road coming off South Peninsula. That's busy today from Fishhook up to Cork Bay and beyond that in towards the St James area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
Alrighty, in your sports, starting off with rugby this hour, Eddie Jones says that he expects to be working again by January with several countries and a European club interested in his services. The 63-year-old quit last month as Wallabies coach after Australia's exit from the World Cup in the group stage, having won just 2 times in 9 tests since taking over in January. He has been heavily linked with a return to Japan, who he led from 2012 to 2014 2015, but reiterated to the Australian newspaper that there had been no formal offer. In football, police have dismissed claims about a bomb at the Loftus Versfeld Stadium during the African Football League final second leg match between Mamelodi Sundowns and Wydad Casablanca. Now, this is after a pyrotechnician who arrived at the venue to set up part of the post-match fireworks display was mistaken to be setting up an explosive device by spectators. Pictures of the man and a video have been doing the rounds on social media, and dismissing the claim, the police said that the man worked for a service provider who was contracted to supply and display fireworks at the end of the game. Still staying with football, SuperSport United coach Gavin Hunt has lamented a missed opportunity to go top of the DStv Premiership table after dropping points in 2 successive games played away in Polokwane. Matsatsanza suffered a 2-1 defeat to Skukune United yesterday, a fixture played 4 days following a 1-1 draw against Polokwane City. SuperSport now go into the FIFA break in second place, and then they are a point behind Sundowns, but the Brazilians have an incredible 4 points in hand, and Hunt could not get over the lack of firepower yesterday.
Should have been 2-0, 3-0, then the game would have been over, then we could have managed it, but we couldn't. We had to chase it, and then they got their second goal was a big deflection, wasn't it? You know, and the ball ended up, I don't know how it ended up, I still haven't seen it, so yeah, disappointing. And then we chased it, you know, we tried to chase it, and then the game opens up, and then, you know, they get a few breakaways.
In cricket, Mitchell Starc says that Australia have lived up to their reputation of peaking at the right time after overcoming a shaky start to win 7 straight World Cup matches. The 5-time champions take on South Africa in the second semi-final on Thursday after the two teams ended on 14 points each in the group stage. Australia lost a one-day series in South Africa, followed by a series defeat to India ahead of the World Cup. They then suffered opening defeats at the tournament to the host by 6 wickets and the Proteas by a huge 134 runs. And for now, they're hoping that they don't lose for a second time at the World Cup against South Africa. With that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for a market update with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Let's look at the pleasing Vodacom and the Premier Group interims, and also looking at the Shoprite's quarterly update.
Afternoon to you, Arjen, and to the listeners. Yes, Vodacom, they serve 196 million customers, while MTN serves 290 million, and their financial services customers stands at 73.5 million, while MTN mobile money active users stands at 63.5 million, and the guys had a very strong performance. However, higher interest rates, elevated levels of inflation, and currency volatility across their markets impacted profits. Basically, same story with MTN. Revenue up 35.5%, positively impacted by them buying the Vodafone Egypt, and financial services revenue now contributes 10.5% to group service revenue, but profits at headline earnings per share down 4.2%, with interim dividends down 10.3%. Vodacom is bigger than MTN when you look into the market value, because market value of Vodacom is 223 billion, while that of MTN is 175 billion, but the Vodacom is a better dividend payer because the dividend yield sits at 6.2%. That one of MTN is 3.6%, but their PE is very demanding. That is of Vodacom at 11, and that of MTN is sitting at 7.7. And remember, Premier Group, this are your Iwiza, maize meal, your blue ribbon bread, guys, and a pleasing set of maiden interim results as a listed company. Remember, Arden, they were unbundled by bread and listed on the JSE on the 24th of March 2023 at 53.80 Rand. Now the share price is 60.50 Rand, and challenging economic conditions, including currency and soft commodity volatility, extensive infrastructural constraints, and higher interest rates, and consumers, as we all know, remain under stress, and that was compounded by lower economic growth. But reduced load shedding has been a welcome relief, and revenue up 7.1%, and profits as normalized, headline earnings per share up 25.5%. 1.4%, and we are here not getting any interim dividend. Shoprite, their quarterly operational update, despite difficult trading conditions, the guys increased the market share, and the market share has been increasing uninterrupted for 55 weeks. And unfortunately, diesel costs are still high. For the quarter, they had to spend 281 million. And supermarket RSA opened 43 new stores. Group sales up 13.2%, and with internal selling price inflation at 8.3%.
And let's look at local and international market developments.
It seems market participants are embracing stocks and eyeing a possible year-end rally. Hence, it feels like fear of missing out is back in the stock market. And we know Moody on Friday downgraded U.S. sovereign debt rating outlook from stable to negative, but investors have taken that in their strides. And of concern today is that China's single-day shopping extravaganza over the weekend, that is an equivalent of what we call Black Friday, unfortunately recorded only small growth, which is a concern. But their retail sales, just like U.S. retail sales and our retail sales, will be released this Wednesday, and U.S. must pass a new stopgap bill before Friday, or else government will shut down. Oil prices held steady with traders cautiously, and they are more worried about the demand issues that is coming from the U.S. and China. We see Brent crude is flat at 81.64, and the yellow metal also steady, waiting for the U.S. inflation data tomorrow in order to gauge interest rate path. As we're talking, the yellow metal is down 0.2% at 1,934. Platinum is up 0.7% at 845, and we've seen that the rand is 1878, and to the pound is 2298, and to the euro is 2004. The DAX, just like the CAC, up 0.3%, FTSE up 0.4%. The Dow and the S&P just opened 5 minutes back. They're down 0.3%, and the JSE is up 0.5%.
Thank you so much. That's Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032, and you can also drop me a voice note on 0614 104 107 and X at Aldrin Sampear.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Hashtag SAFMBTH.
Let's take your calls on 086 000 2032 and your voice notes on 0614 104 107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Let's go to Cape Town. Hannes, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Aldrin. At long last.
Welcome,
Captain,
welcome.
If I say it is all in your hands, then you will automatically think back. I don't want to be long. Let me get to my point. Mr. Aldrin, I have found you, Mr. Kina, and Corley on 4-5 as the three people that I will look at who can do something for us as local people on as far as getting the people accountable who ought to be taken accountable. The SAFM, they are flooded with calls and video footage almost 24/7, with people phoning and complaining almost about every department in government.
Yeah,
they are laying as ruins like you find now in Gaza. Ministers refuse to come to the radio to account or to the TV. Executive mayors, they simply refuse to come, and if they do come, they can only stay there for 5 minutes while they talk, and they give you then also the vision and mission, and their narrative of what is different. Then when people phone in from the very same municipalities, they say, no, that guy's talking nonsense. And so, which means we are every day getting and saying, what is happening? Why is... And I've come to the conclusion we are barking all along up the wrong tree. I would suggest call in Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. He is the head manager of this country.
Well, is he available for interviews? It's probably just like the other ministers as well.
If he is not coming to account, isn't there some kind of law that we can make them?
I was actually about to ask you that. Do you think that there should be a law that says that if you are going to be elected as a public representative, you have the duty to actually have the public outreach, one, but then also where we look at radio as a platform where you can be held accountable or even be engaging with your constituency?
Yeah. At the same time, you know, and the one thing that came to my mind now, these independent people are going to stand in election next year, but they're all standing, they will be. I was thinking, who will hold them accountable if they do? Are they also playing the same music that we have here? They belong to a party.
Yes.
And they are on their own. So
I remember Hannah speaking to Musi Maimani about that, and I asked him that when he was pushing for independent candidates in the local government elections, and I said, who is going to hold independent candidates accountable? At least with the party political system, what you do have is that there's the constitution of the party and so forth and so forth. So there is a mechanism available from the party internal processes to hold a member accountable. Whether they use it or not, that's a different conversation. But when it comes to the independent candidate, how are you going to do it?
My goodness, Alvin, that is a very good question. But my problem is, what I think is we should get Mr. Cyril to come to
I would love to.
And he's management. I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I would love to have that, or to interview the president. That would be amazing. But the president's diary is always so full. The president is always busy. But that would be great. But the elections are coming up, so chances are that you might actually see more and more of the political figures that we hardly see of being interviewed actually giving media access to them. 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086 000 2032.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
What an excuse for a political party. The ANC keeps using historic affairs to buy votes. Because Israel had an alliance with the apartheid government, therefore we support Palestine. Because Russia supported Mkhonto weSizwe with military training and arms, therefore we support Russia under the pretext called non-alignment.
The Soviet Union.
Well, the reality of the matter is that these are historic affairs, and that apartheid ended 30 years ago. There are lots of current affairs that need to be dealt with right now. Unemployment, crime, service delivery. And the fact that the ANC keeps using historic affairs to buy votes is a clear indication that they are an outdated political party that has no vision whatsoever anymore and that is clearly incompetent.
Afternoon, Aldrin. This is Magdalene from Bloom. What Jack Bloom has been querying on your interview is exactly what I've been querying all along. Because in that activity whereby suppliers will be earmarked, and that itself affects local empowerment and economic viability of local area. And it proves the point of high corruption, because national government and provincial government will be involved for the benefit of a certain political party. That is bad, because it affects employment and brings poverty. This is Magdalene from Bloom. Thank you.
By the way, we did invite the Gauteng Health Department. They confirmed that they will participate on the show, but they still haven't responded to us about who the person will be. and considering that we left about an hour 13 minutes before the end of the show, I'm not too sure if they'll make it today, but hopefully when they are ready and do get the guest who will be speaking to us, we'll bring them on air. 0614 104 107, your ex at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
#SAFMBTH.
Well, some good news. Today we celebrate Spark School Soweto after they were recently named this year's World Best School. The school launched a number of community initiatives to help address the challenges of its surrounding area. They help instill environmental responsibility and stewardship in the community. To explain what this win means, we are now joined by Ndabileni Nyambeni, who is the principal of Spark Schools Soweto. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me today.
I have to say, and this recognition comes as the school is celebrating its decade of being in existence. So congratulations. Perhaps it came at a perfect moment as you celebrate 10 years of Spark Schools that saw that there was a gap, and you have now filled at least some of that gap. And here you have recognition, but not locally, but internationally. What does this mean for the school?
I think more than anything, when the founder of the school created this, he wanted to create, the vision was that we lead global education by affording any child from any society quality education at an affordable price. And then speaking to our core values also, which stands for Spark, service, persistence, achievement, kindness, and responsibility, and the fifth core value of Spark Soweto, Ubuntu. So everything sort of aligns with what we stand for as a school and as a network of schools altogether. So I could say even with the 10 years, we would say more than anything that it's destiny. And for us as a school, I think it means that excellence can be achieved anyway, because this is a private school in Soweto where people would then shun it or think of it as less than. So it is a symbol of hope and excellence.
And also a front-on challenge to the status quo, and as you say, also the perception that people have of townships, and seeing this particular school also being in the township and being recognized at an international level. What does this say, one? But the other part also is seeing a number of growing private institutions starting up schools themselves. Then that means that we might have a big problem when it comes to public education.
Yeah, I think it does show the disparity between what private sectors can offer in comparison to public schools. But I think this is an opportunity. Like us at Spark Soweto, we integrate with a lot of the public schools here, and I must say the public schools such as Glen Primary, both Glen A and Glen B do very well, even though there are public schools. So it does show that once we integrate and become strong schools that show best practice with other schools in the community, that we can maybe close a bit of that gap. So that is what I think we as a school are trying to urge or encourage other schools to do that have placed themselves in these neighborhoods.
Yeah. And from your end, at least, where do you think the priorities should be when it comes, one, at least the collaboration that you have with the public schools, but when we solely focus on the public schools and what you have identified as well, could be something that should be, or things that you believe that should be prioritized? Because at the end of the day, these children come from the same societies. So after knocking off at school, after the bell rings and it's home time, they still go back to these societies, and these societies that still have children who are in the public school system where concerns have been raised.
I definitely do think, firstly, the resources that we have in comparison to the other school obviously will create a gap, but moreover, the values that we have enshrined into our curriculum and constitution as a school have created scholars that even when they go to the environment that they're born in, and even the parents and how they speak has changed. The tone of how I want to be responsible, how I want to be an achiever, you know, it breaks that boundary to say that achievement can only be achieved in a certain place. So I think even with public schools, we need to go back where we involve our parents more. involve the community more, and even the teachers are just conscientious of the fact that these kids need somebody to learn to reteach the kids, and they also need to do some unlearning. I think that's what the adults in the spaces need to do. Just create a strong ethos for the kids to understand that I can be great. Greatness comes from within me, because that's what happened here.
And for the parents that have chosen Spark schools, why are they choosing Spark schools, at least from their testimonials?
Primarily because they like how we have structured the education, and I think mainly because of we allow them to be involved. They are very much a part of the decision making that happens in the school. They give us pointers as to how they would like everything to run, and they are allowed to have feelings of unhappiness and uncomfortableness, and they can just voice their opinion throughout. And also, of course, the quality of the education, like
at the end of the day, right? Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations once again. That is Ntambeleni Inyambeni, who is the principal of Spark Schools Soweto. 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
SFM invites you to our inaugural public lecture, delivered by the former Chief Justice Mogoeng. The theme of the lecture is constitutionalism and upholding the rule of law in South Africa. Has corruption and malfeasance eroded the moral fabric of the democratic dispensation? The lecture will take place on the 29th of November 2023 at the SABC M1 Studios in Johannesburg. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
#SAFMBTH.
Hi, Aldrin. If we start worrying about our country first, then worrying our next problem to the next country, fix our country first. First of all, our country is always going down to the knees already. Fix our country. Don't worry about the next person. Worry about us first.
Well,
thank you. Bye.
If you do that, you end up with situations like with Zimbabwe. So I think it's okay, and it's important that we need to focus on the issues that affect us as a country. But you also need to look at your neighbors and what is happening with your neighbors, and where you can assist, you assist. It's just that a lot of times you hear about the sovereignty of the state and how that is sacrosanct. However, though, when things go bad in those countries, they affect the neighboring countries as well. So I think that we should be worried about what happens in other countries because of the impact that it has. But then if you look at our international, our foreign policy, at the core of our foreign policy is human rights. And the human rights mean that we don't look at the borders necessarily, but we deal with the issue that relates to human rights as well, and that informs the decisions that we make, or supposed to.
Aldrin, good afternoon. My name is Ratlo Umabula in Lepalale. Listening to your discussion with one of the callers now who was talking about holding ministers to account, I'm actually shocked to hear you say that they refuse or do not honor interview requests. I thought this is the stuff that only happens on community radio. So we have a big problem from local governance or government up to the ministerial positions there. They want to be celebrated. It happens here. You will invite them when there is a burning issue. They don't want to come to radio. But when they are building something or patching potholes, they want us to celebrate them. They want us to do PR work on their behalf. Otherwise, they just accuse us of always entertaining negative information about them. South Africa and accountability. This seems to be water and oil.
Yeah, no, it happens. It happens. It happens with commercial radio stations as well, where you struggle to find the leaders who would actually agree to come on air and speak about issues that are facing their constituencies. But mind you, watch what's going to happen next year as we lead up to the elections. Watch what's going to happen. Silo is joining us from Mukopane. Good afternoon.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Look,
welcome.
Look, I'm not shocked about the discussion you had with the last caller.
Yeah.
The one that our the message is supporting. I also support that. I have a fight with this other private radio station, whereby we cannot have discussion with the ministers or MECs of the province, and we have a fight, Aldrin, a big fight. But anyway, so I was assuming that these MECs and ministers are supposed to come on air to have discussion with the people on the ground. But it seems like there are ministers who think they are much better than the others, whereby you have to beg them to come on radio and so forth. I can take one now in my mind, Prasen Gotan. I've never heard him on radio, especially, I think, for a couple of years.
Who's that?
On the station, Prasen Gotan.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't want to. He doesn't care about. I mean, he was somewhere on another private radio station, Aldrin, in Joburg. I think he didn't stay long also. So, don't we have a legislation, Aldrin, to force these guys to come on air? To talk to the people that
and it's not just with ministers, Silo. It is with even with the mayors, the MMCs, and so forth as well. If you listen to Kathy's feature, Municipality Watch, that's one of the issues that they struggle as well with as the producers, when they need to come up with the executives that need to be held accountable, at least speak to their constituencies. So it's not just with the ministers, by the way. It's not just at a national level. It trickles down to local government as well.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, let's say in Limpopo, there are just a few individuals. I mean, let me just talk about Popura Matuba. That woman can be on radio station anytime if you call her. That's that. She's
very accessible.
Exactly. The likes of the minister Aaron Mutwane, he is also always here, and many other radio stations that I listen to. But these few individual, Aldrin,
maybe it's just personal preference, and I don't know what a personal preference has to do when it comes to your job. Because at least some people manage to secure them. And maybe it's also about who's behind the mic. Silo for joining us there from Mukopane. 0614104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086 000 2032. It's 5 o'clock. It's time for the news with Greg Gross. Good afternoon.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Good afternoon and thank you, Aldrin. COPE terminates Joburg Speaker's membership and the UN flag lowered to half-mast. COPE has terminated the membership of its speaker in the city of Johannesburg, Colleen Makubele. She was seen in pictures of a new organisation which COPE said was in breach of the party's constitution. She reportedly encouraged South Africans to vote in her capacity as chairperson of the SA Rainbow Alliance at the weekend. It's a voting bloc which was initially set to be the umbrella body for political parties that wanted to work with COPE next year ahead of the elections. COPE President Mosiuoa Lekota.
When you form a political party, you say to the people what you want to do for them, and they vote you for you on the basis of what you promise them. They are not married to you for life. In their own mind is a condition. If you don't do that which satisfies us, we are going to leave. I'm not surprised at all. People come and go. As they grow older, they begin to see that some of the things that we thought were going to happen and so on do not happen.
The Electoral Commission is hosting its first registration drive this coming weekend in preparation for next year's elections. Chief Electoral Officer Simon Mabolo.
That facility can be accessed 24/7. It's very easy to use, and you use it at your leisure. So we do want to once again make a call to young persons to take advantage, to say to them, register, because when you are registered, you have a chance to make a vote. But when you are not registered, even that opportunity that you otherwise have diminishes.
Gauteng MEC for Human Settlements and Infrastructure Development, Lebogang Maile, says the Deputy President Paul Mashatile was not interrogated by investigators regarding loans issued by the Gauteng Partnership Fund to his son-in-law in 2013. The MEC maintains there was no need for Mashatile to be interviewed by the investigators as there was no conflict of interest detected on his part. The probe followed allegations of undue granting of a more than 7 million rand loan to Mashatile's son-in-law to build student accommodation. Maile released the report into the findings of a probe he launched in July at a media briefing in Sandton, north of Johannesburg.
Despite the fact that there were allegations that the Deputy President might have influenced unduly the awarding of the loan, it was found that that's not the case and that there was no conflict of interest and that there were some shortcomings on the project's appraisal and that more comprehensive due diligence and procedural steps ought to have occurred at the time in 2013. And the report also says that the trustees who took or participated in this decision may attract liability as set out in Section 9 of the Trust Property Act.
Case against a man arrested for stabbing his wife multiple times at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology has been postponed to the 20th of this month in the Belleville Magistrates Court in Cape Town. The accused is a student at the University of the Western Cape. The incident occurred over the weekend. His wife, who's also a student at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, is in a critical condition in hospital. It's also emerged that the accused has another pending case of rape. The UN flag has been lowered to half-mast at the organization's headquarters in New York and at all UN secretariat stations around the world in a mark of respect for over 100 staff killed since the start of the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees has announced that 101 of its employees have been killed during the last month of fighting. Showan Bryce Peace reports.
In a somber moment as the sun rose above Manhattan on a crisp autumn morning, the UN flag outside UNHQ was raised and lowered to half-staff in the presence of the Palestinian ambassador Riyad Mansour. The Israeli ambassador Gilad Erdan was absent. This, as the UN Development Programme on Saturday pointed to preliminary reports of shelling at a UN compound in Gaza City that resulted in a significant number of deaths and injuries. Israel has engaged in a relentless campaign of bombardments in the Gaza Strip since the Hamas-led attack killed about 1,200 people in Israel while taking over 200 hostages. Israel's response has resulted in over 11,000 deaths while massively destroying infrastructure. Showan Ricepeace, SABC News, New York.
Top stories that COPE has terminated the membership of its speaker in Johannesburg, Colleen Makubele. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
And coming up in your sports, Bavuma takes part in an optional training session today. Stormers frustrated at by Benetton loss ahead of Munster, and Djokovic ends year as world number 1 after beating Rune. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's crash on Joburg. Mike 1 North causing all sorts of delays today. The collision before Grayston Drive, the backlog of traffic down to about the Oxford Road exit in the Parktown area, so it is super heavy. You've then got a lot of pressure on routes like Corlett Drive, particularly Corlett Drive, Glenhove Road, Athol Oaklands Road, those roads that either feed in or feed off the M1 highway. Very heavy, so a lot of traffic between Parktown and Sandton. You do have the option of Oxford and Rivonia or Louis Botha up through sort of Bramley, Highlands North to be avoiding the highway and to be avoiding the localised congestion as well. Just worth a mention, Benoni's getting some load shedding, so watch for delays getting off the N12 onto Atlas Road. Durban Z2 South remains heavy. Queen Dundee Drive down towards the 4-level Spaghetti Junction exit. And Cape Town today, a bit of pressure on the N2 inbound passing Khayelitsha. There's a crash scene just before you get to Meway, and that's already pushing traffic back to Spine Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
We don't normally do this, but from time to time an official will phone in response to something. We've had a call from a member of the provincial legislature in KwaZulu-Natal, Stembiso Mshengu. Stembiso, thank you for listening and thank you for calling in. Any chance you can please help Sandile? Sounds like a very tough situation for him.
I would be talking to the MSc of Human Settlement for this matter. I would also be talking to the mayor of Umsunduzi. I'm actually more touched hearing that he is blind. we have an obligation to intervene in such instances.
Stambiso, thank you. I really appreciate it. We have the number and we'll pass it on to you immediately.
Please do so, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stambiso Mshengu, all right, really appreciate that. From the KwaZulu-Natal legislature. We can't promise help, but where we can, we'll happily connect people. I think Sandile's story is going to be with us for a long time.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. Beyond the Headline on SAFM, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
It is 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, we will be in conversation with Kgoshi Kabelo Matsipi, who is a member of the Bapedi Kingship royal family, as we look at this issue in relation to the recognition of Bapedi, at least some traditional authorities having been given the recognition as initial settlers of Gauteng with the Commission of the Traditional Leadership Disputes and Claims. Then the Ndebele Royal House is also seeking recognition for parts of Tshwane and the Heidelberg under King Makosonke Mabina's tenure. So we will be speaking about that with Kgoshi Kabelo Matsipe, who will be joining us in the next short while. Another story that we are trying to follow up on is the case of this 43-year-old mine worker of Sibanye mine, Sibanye Stillwater's mine, who stabbed his colleague to death, and videos were circulating on social media. Apologies if you are driving and you're listening with children, it's a bit graphic as well, where the man actually stabbed his colleague, took a selfie, and the colleague's intestines were hanging out as he took the selfie. And just think about what sort of tension amongst colleagues could lead to such a heinous crime. He did appear shortly today in court, and the matter has now been postponed. We hope to get an update with regards to that as well. So 0614-104-107. You can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and your team. Flores here from the Western Cape. Aldrin, I cannot agree with that lady, Amor, who just said that we need to focus on our own issues and challenges. Yes, it's also right that we have to look out for our neighboring countries, but a war or conflict that has been going on for over 70 years. And tell me, when has South Africa successfully negotiated or broker a peace, real peace, all on its own between two fighting countries? Aldrin? No, seriously. We have so much more to do in our own country that we need to fix our house first before we can fix our neighbor's house. Have a good show. Bye-bye.
Well, our former deputy president was part of the delegation that actually, part of the mediators that found an agreement in Ethiopia. So it means that we actually do have the capacity as well as the skills to negotiate and find settlements and mediate where possible. But just because things are going wrong in our country doesn't mean that we should turn a blind eye to what's going on outside of our country. And also some of these things actually have an impact on us. We know the impact of the Russia invasion to Ukraine and how the cost of food just escalated, including the cost of oil as well. So we have a vested interest, at least, if you take into consideration what it would mean for your fellow countrymen. 0614-104-107.
Afternoon, Aldrin. There's a lovely old saying. It says, you need to learn to swim and keep your own head above water before you can help others. And that's exactly the problem with the Constitution and the issue of the border and the sovereignty of the state, is that you need to make sure this your own country is keeping its head above water before you can help others. So there's a very clear line.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It's 12 minutes after 5 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Kgoshikabelo Matsipe, who is a member of the Bapedi Kingship royal family. So 2 submissions from the traditional authorities have been made to be recognized as the initial settlers of Gauteng with the Commission on Traditional Leadership Disputes and Claims. The Ndebele Royal House is seeking recognition for parts of the Tshwane and Heidelberg under King Makosonke Mabina, and the Bapedi Royal House is seeking recognition of the Vaal under Queen Tulare. Our next guest wants to question the role of traditional leadership entities when it comes to facilitating land claims on behalf of a cultural group, and why are traditional authorities not considered as an entity that can claim land to emancipate their people. Kgoshikabelo Matsipe now joining us on the line. Kgoshikabelo, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Afternoon.
Okay. Tell us what you make of these submissions that have been made, and what role you think traditional leaders can actually play when it comes to land transformation.
Firstly, let me correct you. It's Mabena. The Ndebelers will charge you 10 kettles for spelling their key, pronouncing their key wrongly. Let me make 2 rather let me put 2 issues on the table. One, there's the issue before the Commission for the recognition of traditional leadership in the Gauteng area by these 2 kingdoms. In fact, it's not the 2, it's 3 kingdoms. I'm told the Khoisan have also put in their application. Now, sure you are aware with the Bapedi is that the Bapedis have been in Gauteng for years. The rule of King Sekhukhune, I think, was here up until 1879, when the British defeated us with the assistance of the Swazis and I forgot what other tribe. So we've been here up until then. They arrested King Sekhukhune in 1879, and they then released him somewhere. I think it was 1881 after the Pretoria Convention, and they released him with the condition that part of his land will then have to be divided into 3, I think not 3, rather 4 districts, which was the Pretoria Central, the Lydenburg, Middelburg, and Pietersburg. So we have always had presence in the Gauteng area, alongside the other tribes. Then the Ndebelers have their own presence in certain parts of Gauteng, where there was King Tshwane. Now, the process with the Commission is not a process on the land issue. So with the Bapedi, I know that our process is divided into 2. Process number 1 will be the recognition first of our people. Of the Bapedi as a traditional authority in the Gauteng area, mainly because we have existed here before. And number 2 of the process then becomes the land claim process, which is separate from the Commission. I know that as the Bapedi were claimed certain pieces of land in the Gauteng area before our late King Victor Tulare died. A huge portion of Pretoria West has been claimed. I know a huge portion of Ekurhuleni has been claimed. certain portions of the Midrand area have been claimed alongside. There's a chief Kekan, one of the Ndebele chiefs. He's a claimant on that land as well alongside us, So different parts of Gauteng, in fact, have been claimed where we have had presence before the British took away the land from us. You see, the one problem we then have, which I know a lot of people are going to catch feelings and is expected. You know, the minute you mention Gauteng, people then catch feelings and say, why an urban area? Why this? Why that? You know, we traditional leaders are associated with rural areas, and that's not where we were. The reality fact of the matter is that's where we've been. The guys pushed us away from our land and took us to land that has nothing, and they took the most productive land for themselves. So we know for a fact that there will be controversy around the matter where people will catch feelings and make all sorts of noise about it and so on. We're expecting it. But the reality is, do we have a claim or not? And if it's found that we do have a claim, then there's no basis for anyone to dispute the claims that we have put forward. So it's those two issues. But now on the issue of the claims as well, on the land claims, we are having just one problem with the current government. You know, the current government says to us, okay, guys, if you are claiming land as traditional leaders, you are custodians of the land, you don't own the land. We say, okay, no, fine. As traditional leaders, we don't own the land. We are custodians. They say, yeah, the land is under the care of the state, or rather is owned by the state. We say, okay, fine. If you say, okay, we then say, we then take the land. They give us three options. They say, if we give you back the land as traditional leaders, you have to form community, what they call CPA. You have to form a trust, or you have to form a private company. Those are the only three options that we've got as traditional leaders. And we are then saying, hold on, government. What do you mean by that? Because as traditional leaders, we're an authority. As much as we say, yes, the land is not ours, it's for the care of our people, but rather we are holding it for our people. So when this land was taken from us, it was not taken from us in a form of a CPA. It was not taken from us in the form of a company or in the form of a trust. It was taken from us in the form of a tribal authority. And when they now want to bring it back, they want to bring it back in another form. And reality is CPAs are failing across the country, but trust as well. But the main issue then becomes, why not a tribal authority? Because are we not an institution? Because a tribal authority or a traditional authority or kinship can sue or can be sued, you know? Why are you limiting us to a trust? Which is why you would find situations and the controversy around the Ingweyama Trust in KZN. The Ingweyama Trust is formed because government is insisting that they can't give land to us as tribal authorities. And for us, we find it to be a bit very odd.
Okay, so will you be taking this matter to court?
Of course, we've been engaged. You know, the funny part about this matter is we've been engaging tribal houses or rather royal houses across the country, and what's this thing? The two traditional leaders associations. I'm sure you are aware that there's a breakaway of what you know as Contralesa. There's a breakaway organization, Rolesa, the Royal Leaders of South Africa. We've engaged them, and they are keen. And you know, when we're engaging them, we found it very funny. Where we get there, we say, guys, we're in a problem, we're in a crisis. What do we do? I was taken aback. I get to a meeting with one of the two of these organizations. They said to me, no, we see this problem. In fact, AfriForum has approached us. They begged us. They want to support us in going to court on the matter because they feel it's unfair. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting. But the reality of the matter is, yes, we are approaching the court on this matter. It should, in the next month or early January, we will be approaching the courts to seek clarity on this matter.
And then just lastly, on the matter relating to the claim in Gauteng, is the intention there recognition or is it restoration? And I'm asking this, the difference between it, because if you have the Khoi and the San people who claim that they are the original inhabitants of this particular part of Southern Africa, can they also not claim and say that it should rather be restored to the previous initial owners?
So it's a bit of both, really. I mean, for us, it's really restoration. You see, what we have decided to do as kingships is really to sit down and decide, guys, okay, how are we going to coexist, especially in Gauteng? How are we going to manage this thing? Because the one thing that we don't want is for us to start fighting as clans, and which is what the British have always wanted anyway. So we then sat down and said, guys, where are you? In parts of Gauteng, for example, there are parts of Gauteng where we can exist, where we know that the Ndebelers have always been there, you know. So it's about the unity of these kingships to say, guys, we are here, we are here, we are here. And what are we bringing to the table as well? Because the one thing as the Bapedi, we've made it very clear. I'm sure you might have heard about it, where we are saying, guys, okay, it's fine. We part of the land that we own in what they call Skukune land in Limpopo is a mining area with about 45 mines, chrome, platinum, and so on. We are saying we are going to wage a war with the 45 mining companies very soon. In fact, we started mobilizing. We've done everything. We're just waiting for a moment to hit. We are saying to these mining companies, hold on. We think you've raped us is enough as a nation. We really want you to commit that 50% of raw materials is no longer in Skukune land or raw. We want this thing to be processed in Sekukune and parts of Gauteng. If you want to sell it, take it.
Does that mean that you invest with the infrastructure that is required as well?
Of course, that's what we do. So we want a situation where, as a tribe, we re-industrialize part of Gauteng where we've been before, but obviously not for the Bapedi only. I mean, and currently now Gauteng has different tribes, you know. I mean, for example, if we were to want to beneficiate, we've got all the minerals in Skukune. We are short of just one mineral, which is iron ore. And if one of the tribes, for example, let's say these guys in the Northwest play ball, I'm sure they do have iron ore, or they play ball, they bring the iron ore, Gauteng is the middle ground. We beneficiate in Gauteng, and that's it. And I mean, really, a reality of the matter is the economy in Gauteng is dead. We need a way in which we are going to, re-industrialize it. And we've reached a point where we want to deal with this notion that, you know, when a person talks of traditional leadership, we are just associated with being half naked and wearing this leopard skin, taking handouts and so on.
Yeah.
That's not what we are. That's not who we are.
It's almost like the perception is like, because you're a traditional leader, therefore you're uncivilized and therefore can't even be seen to be operating in the economy as much as what we've seen, for instance, happen in the Northwest. But thank you so much for your time. Kgoshi Kabelo Matsibia there is a member of the Bapedi Kingship Royal Family. We're in conversation next with Horisani Sithole.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Well, the case against a Sibanye-Stillwater employee who allegedly stabbed to death his colleague and took a selfie with the corpse has been postponed to Monday next week. This is to give the accused enough time to appoint his own legal representative and to apply for bail. The video of the killing has sent shockwaves across the country after it went viral on social media. 43-year-old Boinehelo Lififa appeared briefly at a packed Western Area Magistrates Court west of Johannesburg to tell us what emerged from the court appearance. We now speak to Horisani Sitole, SABC News reporter. Good evening. Thank you so much for making time for us. A brief appearance, but what happened?
Evening, Aldrin. Actually, it was very packed. There were people who came out in numbers. From different sides in the mines and even members of the community. What I've noticed there is that there were two courtrooms. While we were still busy with the media application to cover, people didn't know which courtroom out of the two was going to be at the sitting. But I've noticed that actually both, there were people standing outside. There were even those who had already taken seats. And once we were granted, because then the order was passed in the magistrate's office, when they saw us moving with our equipment, they just rushed and followed us into the next courtroom. We've seen also, I need to highlight, Aldrin, that while we were doing the application, the magistrate did ask the defense who was there to, if then there was any objection to us applying, and then there was none. And that one can say can be evident while he walked in, the accused the accused walked in. He didn't seem to be bothered. He didn't show any remorse at all.
And were there any colleagues and perhaps maybe family members of the victim?
Aldrin, we understand that the family members were there, but what I can highlight is that as packed as it was, unfortunately we are unable to locate which one, and also that talks to how then you'll remember that some of mine employees, they live close by the mines at the hostels. So remember, even this incident happened at the hostels. You find that it's you yourself who's there, but then your other family members might be around Gauteng in different parts. So there's no much of an interaction that that small community from the hostel would know that here are the family members. And also, but then colleagues were there. We've seen some of the people there. They were there in union regalia, were dressed in AMCU t-shirts, and then those are some of the things we picked up. But in terms of being able to locate the family, unfortunately, but I can say, Aldrin, that we understand that the deceased comes from Mozambique at a place called Chikwalakwala. It's a coastal town, kilometers, 150 to 200 kilometers outside Maputo.
And from the colleagues, were you able to establish, according to their version at least, what happened?
Aldrin, there seems to be too much. There's too much, and also seems like hearsay evidence. You remember when the story broke, some had this version that actually the deceased had gotten the accused fired at work, and then you hear that actually even today we're hearing stories that actually this person would have been arrested before the deceased have been seeking help earlier on. But it's something that still needs to be tested and proven, because it seems like there's too many versions to this.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Horisani Sitole, the SABC News reporter. It's 5:30, time for the news headlines with Greg Hoos.
Thanks again, Aldrin. In the headlines of the South Hour, the Department of Correctional Services says a probe is underway to establish the source of the diphtheria outbreak at the Pollsmoor Correctional Facility in Cape Town. COPE has terminated the membership of its speaker in Johannesburg, Colleen Makubele, and rescue workers in northern India are battling for a second day to save construction workers trapped underground after the road tunnel they were building collapsed. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And a final traffic update with Rob Byrne. Good evening.
Good evening. We are seeing some heavy rain with localised flooding in parts of Mpumalanga. The rain seems to be heaviest at the moment around Bethel, Ermelo and the Hendrina region. So do take care. The road that links Standerton to Bethel, the R38, is currently flooded and underwater. So there will be a bit of queuing pressure there, but please be careful. Jetberg crash on the Mike 1 running north at Grayston Drive earlier today. That's caused a major backlog alert. If you're leaving central Joburg, queuing from Houghton Drive in Parktown all the way through to that scene. A lot of pressure as well on routes like Caller Drive, Glenhove Road, Athol Oaklands Road, any sort of route that goes to or from the Mike 1 Highway, really under some pressure today. Queues on the N12 home to Benoni. There's some load shedding there, so big backlogs coming off at Atlas Road without traffic lights. Durban side also getting a bit of rain this afternoon, so take it easy. M13 Kloof onto Fields Hill is very heavily backed up again today. And the M2 driving into Cape Town. This is the N2 highway, a crash in front of Khayelitsha just by Meway. That has pushed traffic all the way back to Baden-Powell Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Righty, in your sports this hour, Proteas captain Themba Bavuma took part in an optional training session for more than 30 minutes at the Eden Gardens today. He ran a couple of laps around the outfield before doing some fitness drills under the watchful eye of the team's physiotherapist and the strength and conditioning coach. It is understood that Bavuma's fitness will continue to be monitored ahead of Thursday's semi-final, and that the team's management believe that as a captain, he'll be given the best chance to play. Meanwhile, Morne Mokal has quit as Pakistan's fast bowling coach a month before his contract was to expire. No reason has been given yet, but he was appointed in June this year as part of a reshuffle of the coaching staff, which saw Mickey Arthur return as team director. Meanwhile, Mitchell Stark says that Australia have lived up to their reputation of peaking at the right time after overcoming a shaky start to win 7 straight World Cup matches. The 5-time champions take on South Africa in the second semi-final on Thursday after 2 teams ended on 14 points each in the group stage. Australia lost a one-day series in South Africa, followed by a series defeat to India ahead of the World Cup. They then suffered an opening defeat of the tournament to the host by 6 wickets and the Proteas by a huge 134 runs. In football, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Rulani Mokwena says that there won't be room for complacency in the domestic league at the club following the African Football League win. After winning the lucrative 76 million rand prize money, Mokwena was asked how he plans to motivate the group of players to double their efforts for a lot less, because should the Brazilians retain their DStv Premiership title, then they go on to win the Nedbank Cup. That's only 22 million rand at stake. But Mokwena insists that his charges will continue to apply the same work ethic.
They know they'll be in big trouble with me. Now there'll be big issues. This is a special group. Believe you me, we lost in Casablanca 2-1. We had a training session the next day with a couple of the players that didn't play, and I can tell you, we trained like a team that had just lost 5-0.
In rugby, Stormers coach John Dobson says that the weekend setback to Benetton in the United Rugby Championship has put them back significantly. Following 2 victories in South Africa, the Cape Town-based side suffered their 2nd consecutive loss on tour, this time around to the Italians. And Dobson says that they had plans before their next trip to champions Munster to win against Benetton.
We wanted to go to Munster in a position to attack, not on the defensive, and we needed this win. This was one of the wins we wanted on tour, so it's hugely disappointing for us. And I thought we'd done without playing particularly well, we've probably done enough to win it. I think Joseph Dwyer at the end there thinks it's the 5, thinks it's the try line. But Moore's going, we would have got over the line anyway. And that was 4 more long points, It puts a lot of pressure on next week. But we've been in these positions before, and we do fight back, and we will fight back.
In rugby, Eddie Jones says that he expects to be working again by January with several countries and a European club interested in his services. The 63-year-old quit last month as Wallabies coach after Australia's exit from the World Cup in the group stage, having won just 2 times in 9 tests since taking over in January. He has been heavily linked with a return to Japan, who he led from 2012 to 2015, but reiterated to the Australian newspaper that there had been no formal offer. Ending things off with some tennis action, Novak Djokovic will end the year as world number 1 for a record 8th time after he beat Holger Rune at the ATP finals in Italy. The 24-time Grand Slam champion claimed a 7-6, 6-7 and 6-3 win in his opening Green Group match at the season-ending event on Sunday. Victory for Djokovic extends his winning run to 19 consecutive matches. With that said, it's a wrap from my side. Don't forget to tune in into our sports show, Top Sport, with Michael Abramson from 7 till 8 p.m. Other than that, ke nna Tumeng Kgapele, Modimo ke yo.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for a MoneyWeb market update with Jimmy Moyaha. Jimmy, good evening. What's coming up?
Good evening, Aldrin. Welcome back. How was your holiday?
Thank you. Was working, not holidaying, unfortunately. But it was a great experience, though.
Working, sure. That's a term we'll use for it. All right, Aldrin. The update for today's show, we've got Altron results. They're coming out, they came out earlier today. We look at their interim results. We also speak to Premier. The Premier Group put out their first set of interim results after having relisted on the JSE for the first time in about 18 years. They relisted earlier in the year in about March or so. So they put out interim results. Now they're going to do full year results next year, March. So we speak to their CEO about that first set of 6-month results and what that business looks like. Vodacom also put out results today. The Vodacom Group giving some indication on how much they've benefited from that Vodafone Egypt acquisition there. We speak to that CEO as well around that. And then we take a look at the and this is because it's Personal Finance Monday, we take a look at traveling and traveling on a budget, because it is still important to travel even though you are unable to afford the things that you may have wanted to in the past. I know certainly from my travel experiences, things have gotten significantly more expensive. Whether work is paying for it, whether you're paying for it, things are just more expensive. But we look at the importance of still finding a way to travel for the sake of your mental health and your mental peace. But also because you must enjoy things. It's December. People must have good times and de-stress after a long year. We've been through a lot as South Africans, and that's one of the things we must look into. And then we've also got a conversation with PPS Investments. They're looking at the plans they have for wanting to change the retirement landscape and offering unique retirement products around that. But before we get into all of those conversations, we will take a quick look at the markets, because it's been a fairly good day considering where we closed the market last week. And hopefully this is the start of a really good week. We really need to recover some of the ground we lost last week. I'm joined on the line by Henko Creer to take a look at that. Good evening, Henko. Thanks so much for taking the time. All share was up, but the rand is still heading towards 19 rand and still struggling.
Yes, unfortunately, the rand is struggling. Good evening to you and to Aldrin, and good evening to all the listeners. Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy, a relatively good start to the week. Not for the US at this stage. If we move over and just move abroad and just have a look at how US markets are doing at the moment, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ losing about 0.5% so far. The Dow Jones not by that much, about 0.1% down, but European stocks closed 0.5% stronger. Like you said, the JSE today, the all-share index finishing 0.3% stronger, and that was at a closing level of 71,633 points. The resources index gained 1.5%, the industrial index 0.3% up, but the financial index lost 0.6%. British American Tobacco and Anglo each finished 2% stronger, and then BHP, Process as well as Glencore each gained 1.5%, with AB InBev and Naspers finishing 1% stronger. On the other hand, Richmond losing 2% today, but not losing as much as a company like Vodacom, finishing 4% down. Karoo and Absa each lost 3%. The MTN Group, Goldfields as well as Redefine finished 2% weaker, and equities lost 1.5% today. But then back to some good news. On the positive side of things, Harmony had a terrific day, finishing 9% stronger. Northern gained 5%. Kumba as well as ARM and Implats each finished 4% stronger. Then Amplats gained 3.5%. Pick n Pay finished 3% up, and WBHO, Sasol as well as the Foschini Group each gained 3% at the end of the day. On the commodities market, the price of gold is currently $1,935 an ounce. Silver on the dot, $22. Platinum trading at $858 an ounce, and palladium now sitting at $978. Brent crude currently trading at $82.20 a barrel, and the rand slipping today, now sitting at 18 rand 77 to the US dollar, 23 rand to the pound, 20 rand to the euro, and 12 rand to the Australian dollar. A Bitcoin will cost you $36,800, and that's more or less 704,000 rand. Jimmy, in short, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much, Henko, for that update. Good to see that Brent crude is still much lower. Yes, it is up for the day, but it's still below $85, and that's important because none of us can afford more fuel price increases. But we're going to leave it at that. We're going to catch up with the listeners just after 6. For now, Aldrin, it's back to you and the team.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Back again just after 6 o'clock. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032, and you can also drop me a voice note on 0614104107 and an X at Aldrin Sampear.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and the brilliant team. How are you today? Aldrin, it's surprising that people treat war as if there's one war that's special and another war that is less special. If you look at it now, everyone is quiet about the Russia-Ukraine war, and everyone is now talking about the Gaza-Israel war. And it's sad because at the end of the day, people are being killed. You hear Naledi Pandor saying the Prime Minister of Israel must be arrested. Yet they failed to arrest Vladimir Putin, yet he was killing people the same way that the Prime Minister of Israel is doing. So let's be fair on this world if we want things to work fair. Thank you.
It's a very good afternoon, Aldrin. Hey, it's good to be back. It's good to be back.
Great to be back.
Traveling, and I've been away for 5 weeks. So it's good to be back in the country, my home country.
Yes. And, I know the feeling.
Yeah, as I was traveling, I realized one thing. How the world has shifted its eyes and moved to watch Israel and Palestinian conflict. And they forget about those Russia and Ukraine stuff. It's amazing how the world is moving.
Adrian, Mike here, truck driver. You know, I drive almost every part of South Africa. I'm always on the way. My point is, I've got a problem with these people who own cattle, cows. You know, these people, they like to feed their cows near the road. And there's a lot of bush at the back there, all over it. But they bring these cows near the road. Everywhere you go, like Vryheid. When we pass Vryheid, like Postmansberg, that side of Northern Cape. They like to feed their cattle near the road. I'm just asking myself, what is the difference with this grass near the road and the grass near the bush? Because it's the bush is a lot of bush there.
Okay, let's ask. Maybe there's somebody who knows. What is it about the grass and the crops that are found closer to roads that make them, I guess, more delicious for the animals compared to the ones that are more inland? And I wonder if there's an issue also about the access to that particular land where you do have some of the crops as well as the grass being grown, and perhaps the shepherds are told that no, you can't use my area, can't have your cattle roaming around my area, so rather use the side of the road. KD is joining us from the Northern Cape. Good evening.
Good evening, Adrian and listeners.
Hmm.
You see, on this thing about land, I think I'm beginning to think actually that maybe Christians also should form some tribal royal offices, and also claim land for themselves. Because when I look into the situation of land, we are going to have a problem. Because the people who, whether they are Mandebele or Bakedi, who will claim Gauteng, they will claim the Vaal, and the Sotho will claim the Free State, part of the Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal, and so on, and Swatini also will claim. But now when all they have claimed, then the Khoi, or the San, or both of them, the question will be, but we are the originals here. We are the indigenous. But who is first between the San and the Khoi will then also become another problem. But here is another problem, Aldrin. Many people, Bantu-speaking people, they have got San blood in them. Even Nelson Mandela had more San blood than Xhosa or Tembu blood. So these people also may claim by the blood.
Yeah.
And they will say that my descendants
And what level
also
of
we
purity then considers or determines whether you are a rightful claimant?
You see, those are the questions which we have to answer, Aldrin.
Yeah.
And then also there are many white people who have got the same blood. Then if now we go that route, we are claiming and we are confused. White people now, they may also claim through those mixed races or so-called colors because their fathers were white, and if their fathers were white, they will claim this land for white people in the end.
Okay, KD there from the Northern Cape. Let's go to Anonymous, who's joining us from KZN. Good evening.
Good evening to you. Aldrin, how are you?
Good, how's it?
Oh, well, thank you, Aldrin. Thanks for asking. And I just want to talk about the Palestinian people. I want to say we got 53 Islamic states. And I want to know why these 53 Islamic states are not standing by and talking. I'm not looking for war. I'm not looking for people to die in every country. I am looking for peace. I am asking, why are these countries not looking after the interests of their own people and expect everyone around the world to stand up, like South Africa must stand up, and every other country. We got 56 black states. We must ask them all to stand up. No, the 53 countries of Islamic states must stand up, and if there is a signed peace agreement stating that there should be a two-party state, then there should be a two-party state. If it was 17 years ago, then it should be a two-party state. What's the need for war? I don't understand what's the need for war, right? Because the peace agreement has been signed. So they must wake up, and some of our Muslim countries must not play dual role and be on the side of Europe one day and be on the side of the United States and be on the side of Russia and be on the side of different countries. They must stand up and stop the problem amicably without violence and without war. I'm surprised that in this age and time, in 2023, this time is going to be 2024, where we got war in the countries around the world.
But Anonymous, the interesting thing about the conversation that you're raising now and the previous caller that we just had, at the core of it is also land. It is also about the occupation. It is about restitution. It's about dignity, the dignity of people. But what sort of role do you see the Arab states play, or perhaps the Muslim Islamic states play? What role do you think they can play?
We don't even hear of them. We don't know what role they play because we don't even hear of them.
But what role do you envision them play?
I think they play dual roles. In me, I think they play dual roles. I don't think they really play a role in really resolving the issue between the Zionist people of Europe and also the Palestinian people.
Okay.
It feels like they like war. It seems like they like war. It seems like the other country is enjoying the war that's carrying on between both the parties.
Anonymous there from KZN, 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Afternoon, Aldrin. It's a shame, man, when you talk about the issue of land claim. Because the ruling party have been failing their own people. They failed to repeal the Land Act of 1957, which is unconstitutional. If the Bapedi people take the Tulare or whoever the city of Tshwane to court, I'm telling you, they are going to win. But if those people make an appeal, the appeal is going to favor the Tulare royal family because they're still going to use the Land Act of 1957. So I don't see them winning because unless if the ruling party repeal the Land Act of 19, we are begging them. In Limpopo, we have been asked the premier, but it's remaining mum about it. I thank you very much.
Hi, Aldrin. It's Admire here from KZN. Just to comment on one of the voice notes with regards to heading cattle next to the road or next to the main roads. Growing up, I used to head cattle. These are the few reasons why I would, as a young boy, bring my head of cattle closer to the main road. Number one, if I am heading cattle right next to the main road, that means I will be standing in the yellow margin of the road where there is no ticks to attack me later. So if I'm in those thick bushes, chances are the time I go home, I'll be having ticks on my body. Then number two, when it's raining, most of the rainwater doesn't penetrate into the tarred road. It just flows back into the edges of the road. And the grass there is much juicier. It contains a lot of water as compared to the grass that's just in a normal area. So those were the two reasons why we would bring our head of cattle closer to the road for grazing. Thank you.
Okay, that's I think that's a fair explanation, especially if you think about the tarred road and the water that flows from the tarred road, where there used to be just open soil, perhaps before. Now that water flows from the tar road onto the side of the road, which then makes the grass on the side of the road more juicy. Sharon is joining us from Kokstad. Good evening.
Good evening, Alvin. I just want to, yes. I've been taking note on Radio SAFM and the very valuable inputs from the different callers. KJ made a point there, Alvin. And this point that he's making, always, I don't know whether should I say gets ignored or not. But what I want to bring in here is that when you look back and you take a two-step back, then one got to get to how did this, what is this kingship or royalty that claim certain land, and all the kings anyway. How did that, that's the question we should ask. We're in a democratic country, we've got a constitution. How did it come about that the Inguni to the
Ingonyama Trust
Framework Act of 2003, that act there was put and they could claim to traditional leaders, kingship and all that. And the Khoisan was left out. And so many years after 2003, then the Khoisan came in with the Act 3 of 2019.
Yes.
But that's clearly a discrepancy here. In fact, biasness.
Certainly. Certainly.
Undemocratic, this thing. And Crazy is making a point there. Because, this act is there. It is suspended. And what if the rightful owner now is the Khoi or whoever?
Yeah.
If one wants to
I actually thought, Sharon...
been getting, let me just finish my point.
Yeah.
I've been collecting, claiming this land and all that. And when you look at Israel and Palestine, it's the same scenario. You understand? Are we going to go to war or what? No, it is not democracy. Surely we can talk here, but we need a solution to bring government back and say, how did this come about?
Yeah.
That a certain race or tribe, whatever you want to call it, was left out.
Conquest power, as well as the projection of superiority. I was going to say, Sharon, I actually thought that, remember when the new South African coat of arms was launched? I think it was April 2000. It then also included Khoi and San language in it, right? And I thought that from that moment on, it would actually be a build-up towards the recognition of the leadership of the Khoi and San. But, Anyway, let's go to, is it Yahid, who's joining us from Cape Town? Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Aldrin. Just two comments. Thank you so much that we're keeping the Palestinian struggle alive and the discussion. Just 2 points. The one is that it's not about Islam and Judaism. It's not about Arabs and Jews. It's about, as you mentioned, it's about the disposition of the historic people of that land by a colonial occupier. So people must please, these things don't happen in a vacuum, and it never started yesterday. Same like if you were to come back and speak about the land question in South Africa, we can't go back to 1994. We have to go back in history. We have to go back to the arrival of Europeans here, the wars of disposition, etc. And then we have to think long and hard about how do we fix the situation. So it's not about Muslims, it's not about Arabs, it's a colonial a project that is going on there, and the Palestinians have all the right to defend and fight for their sovereignty. And this nonsense about, oh no, the United States and the Europeans are in support of a two-state solution. Go look at the map, Google modern, current-day map of Israel-Palestine, and you will see it's impossible. There's no land left. The Israelis and the Zionist state have taken up so much. There is no place for a contiguous.
And the question really, Yahid, is also, so if the Israeli Defense Force is going to, in some parts of Gaza, be providing security service, what's the next step after that?
Explain that point. I've never heard of this.
So remember that Benjamin Netanyahu said that the Israeli Defense Force will be providing security in the parts of Gaza, right? This is now as the war is now continuing. Sure. So my question is then, what do you think is going to happen after the so-called security service is being provided?
I think the murder, the killings and the torture and the detention without trial of the Palestinians will continue. That has been there since 1948. Yep. It's actually been there since post-World War I. So I don't think there's any change. Better, this war is a war by Benjamin Netanyahu to keep himself out of prison. Like Donald Trump, he faces huge political issues that in Israel, and there's no better.
Yeah. Okay, apologies there, Yahid. We've run out of time.
#SAFM-BTH.
We've come to the end of our program. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 3 to 6 with me, Aldrin Sampear. Today we're playing out with Kajanine Walewatu, and our parting shot is from Princess Diana, who once said, "Carry out a random act of kindness with no expectation of reward, save in the knowledge that one day someone might do the same for you." And Flores is reading our credits this evening.
Hi, good evening, listeners. We have come to yet another exciting edition of the BTH team. Behind the mic, Aldrin Sampear, Tumi on the sports desk, and the whole production team, which is Temba, Kanya, Husani, Mark, and Lundi. Let's do this again tomorrow between 3 and 6. Good night. Bye.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
And remember to love each other and lead with compassion. Totsins, enjoy the rest of your evening.